Hello everybody, welcome back to this channel, to this review, and to this series of James Bond reviews. In this one here, we're going to be talking about Goldeneye, which was released in 1995. For those that are brand new here, I'm Ross, and hello, welcome. For those returning, you know what to expect. This is not going to be any different now. This is going to be me, even though I have a script, just popping it all off at the top of my head. So, hi, and thanks for coming back, and thanks for watching this. Goldeneye. I have been watching this movie non-stop for about 3 weeks now. 4 weeks, actually. I am so scared about filming this review that I didn't even know what to do. I wrote all of my notes down. I sat at the computer like a maniac typing everything out. I sat on my phone at other points typing it out. I've taken notes. I've done kill counts, the shags. I've done the locations. I've done everything I can. And every single time I try and get my thoughts out for this film, I am just frozen, much like Boris at the end of this movie. I am petrified to review this movie because I don't know how to say anything about this film without it being super positive. And that's not a bad thing, but if I could just take all of my emotions and my feelings off my head and just put them into your head, then you would understand how I feel about this movie. Now, Goldeneye, as I said, 1995, very end of the year kind of thing. And this is actually the very first Bond movie that I ever saw at the cinemas, at the theaters. It is the Bond movie that I don't even remember watching it at the cinemas. Like, I know I watched it, but I don't have any memory of my experience in the theater. If that does make any sense. I hope it does. It's one of those films that this is the one that really solidified my love of Bond, but it goes a little bit deeper than that because it was also the video game. Now, everybody knows, if you're a video game fan, you know Goldeneye 64, released for the Nintendo 64. It came out about 1997, I believe, so it was 2 years after the release of this film, and Goldeneye 64 was a phenomenon. That movie, that video game came out and just changed video games forever. And that's not just me saying it because it's a James Bond. It is hands down the truth. This video game was a first-person shooter on a console that was not a Doom clone. It changed first-person shooting as a whole. It inspired so many other first-person shooters. And it proved that first-person shooters could work on a console instead of just being PC only. It pushed the Nintendo 64 to its limits. It introduced gamers all around the world to James Bond, and it did the same for me. Now, as I said, we watched this movie at the cinemas. My mum and my dad took me and my two older brothers. And I remember watching it at the cinemas on a weekend night. And then after that, I remember going to a pizza shop, getting a pizza, and heading home with my parents. So the memory of this movie is there. But it wasn't until the video game Goldeneye 64 that I played that video game. I remember it vividly that my brother purchased Goldeneye 64 on his Nintendo 64. I remember him sitting me down, me playing the very first level of the game, the opening level, which is you heading toward the dam, using a sniper rifle at that point, dropping down and going into the facility level. And those two levels made me a James Bond fan. So from 1997, I was just obsessed. I went out, purchased Goldeneye 64 on VHS, which unfortunately I don't have as part of my collection because I've lost it in the house moves and all my stuff being damaged years and years and years ago. But it was one of those movies that it just holds, well, GoldenEye 64 holds a special place in my heart, but GoldenEye, this movie, holds such a tremendous part in my heart. It's always an amazing experience for me. And it runs a bit deeper than that, because I mentioned in my last review that, or my last two reviews in the Timothy Dalton movies, that I had a friend named Besnick, and he would always come with me when I worked at a bottle shop, and we would set up like a DVD player in the back storeroom, and we would watch, Timothy Dalton, James Bond movies. But GoldenEye was also another one that we would always watch. And he and I would play the video game together, multiplayer deathmatch. I mean, if you knew, that game was just fantastic. So this movie here for me is, it's such a big impact in my life. Now, you have to think that when the last previous movie came out, the James Bond previous film came out, which was License to Kill, Timothy Dalton was James Bond. He had been in 2 movies up to that point. That movie came out in 1989, and if everything was going according to plan, in 1991 we would have had Timothy Dalton's 3rd film. But there was a whole bunch of legal issues happening at the moment. I've heard many different things, that the rights to the TV license of the movies was being sold to companies, and Cubby Broccoli was not impressed at all and pressed legal issues, and then more legal issues happened, and then United Artists had legal issues with companies and this and that. There are many better people online that have spoken about it. Seek them out. It is worth finding out what happened. But needless to say, this movie was, or this franchise actually, from 1989 all the way up to this release, was kind of just really stuck down, was really held down by legal issues. So we had this 6-year gap from License to Kill to GoldenEye. And by the time they were ready to start sorting out, all the legal matters had been sorted out, and by the time GoldenEye was actually starting to film, because even though they were having legal issues, Cubby Broccoli was getting scripts written, he was having ideas put out there, and they still had in their mind that Timothy Dalton was going to be back as James Bond. But Timothy Dalton, it depends on who you want to believe. Some people say that he was fired from the role as James Bond because License to Kill was not a success at the box office. Some people say Timothy Dalton walked away from the role. Either way, he was not brought back for this film, and we've actually got Pierce Brosnan, who took up the mantle as James Bond. And again, Pierce Brosnan was actually meant to be James Bond for The Living Daylights. And there was just actually a recent interview where he was on a talk show, Pierce Brosnan, and he actually spoke about what happened back then. And if I can put the clip in, it will go in here.
And during those 60 days, I did the wardrobe fitting, I had the Living Daylights, the script right beside the bed.
Oh my God.
Day 59, all is good, we're okay. Cubby Broccoli, he said, look, you can have him for 6 episodes, but no more than 6 episodes. Day 59, day 60, we're in Malibu in the colony. Phone rings, hello, hi. Oh, they wanted the option of 22.
Really?
Cubby said, that's it, all bets are off. And that was it.
Unbelievable.
Timothy Dalton was in the next week.
Pretty much, he went from 1987 to 1995, and he came back as James Bond. And in his first outing as James Bond, 007, Pierce does an absolutely spectacular job in the role. He is actually hands down in this film here, and I'm only basing it on GoldenEye, he would have to be the best James Bond based on this movie alone. Because there's so many factors that go into making a good James Bond. Yes, Timothy Dalton is like my number one, because he sticks to this darker, more brutal take of James Bond, but he loses a little bit of that ladies' man quality that Roger Moore had. Now, when you look at Pierce in this film, Pierce Brosnan, or Pierce, when you look at him in this role, he has all the best qualities of Sean Connery, all the best qualities of Roger Moore, and all the best qualities of Timothy Dalton. He's wrapped it all up into one. And I know that with time, Pierce Brosnan has said that he wishes he could have made the role a little bit more unique to him rather than being kind of like a copy of others that had come before him. But that does not detract from the fact that we have got an absolutely phenomenal first outing as a James Bond for Pierce Brosnan. It is the best. This movie here is my number one James Bond movie of all time. So I'm going to let you know that straight up front. It is my number one James Bond movie of all time. And I think it's time we actually get into the film. Now, it does open with James Bond, and he's actually running. He's running along a dam with a bungee cord over his shoulder, and comes to the end of this dam, looks down at the ledge, and just jumps off, skydives straight down with a bungee cord, all the way down into like this weapons facility, this chemical weapons facility. And I remember now I'm going to say when I first watched it, but that would be at the cinemas. But when I watched it on VHS after playing the video game so many times, when I watched it at home on VHS for the first time, this scene alone blew me away. It was just absolutely spectacular that we just open up to this movie, massive wide angle. He just dives straight down. And the stuntmen, please just give them everything that they deserve, because without them, you would not have the stunts that we admire in these movies so much. But he just pulls out his like grappling gun, shoots it as he's dropping down. So he would shoot it down to make the rope taut so it doesn't actually fly all the way back up. Then uses the laser on the gun to cut a hole in there and then drops into the facility. And what I really like is the introduction we get to Pierce Brosnan, because we first see his eyes, which would pretty much just be where my glasses are now. You see that really super close up. And then the first proper introduction you get is one of the Soviet soldiers. He's just sitting on the toilet doing number 2, reading a newspaper, and he must hear a noise. And as he's got the newspaper up, he puts it down, and Pierce is just, or James Bond, I should say, he just drops down. He's facing this guy upside down, punches him and knocks him out, and that's the introduction you get. And then from there, you've got James Bond sneaking through the facility, making his way through, sees a whole bunch of guards, like Soviet military, kind of having their meal, or something, must be lunch break, having a meal. Then he meets up with Alec Trevelyan. 006 is played by Sean Bean, which is brilliant casting. So he meets up with Sean Bean. They go further down through the facility. Then they get to the these massive vats of chemicals. We don't know what the mission is. All we know is they've got to go in there. They've got a 6-minute timer on these little explosive bombs. They're going to blow up these chemical vats. So we have to imagine there's some sort of chemical weapons that they're making, because that's what the facility is. But we have to imagine that it's just destroy these chemicals and the facility and get out. And while they're doing that, Bond and Trevelyan are having like a little bit of a friendly exchange with each other. So you figure out that, yes, they are not only working together in MI6 as 00 agents, but they're actually outside of the missions. They must be good friends. And I love the banter between the two of them, shut the door, buy me a pint, things like this. They're having a bit of a joke, and then all of a sudden Trevelyan just goes dead quiet, no pun intended. Bond kind of pokes his head out as he set up these 6-minute timers, and you see a whole bunch of Soviet military guys there. And then you've got Oromov standing there with a pistol, with a gun, held at Trevelyan's head, and he goes, I'm going to count down to 10, come out, put your weapon down, to Bond, put your weapon down, come out, and in 10 seconds, I'm going to kill this guy if you don't come out. So Bond, runs back behind the vats, these big tall cylinders, clicks the timer from 6 minutes down to 3, puts his hands up, starts making his way out, and Trevelyan just says to him, pretty much don't worry, just do the mission. Oromov shoots him. Bond then runs back behind the vats, grabs his gun, and then gets this trolley cart, which has got these little, I imagine, explosive chemicals in these little canisters, gets it and then starts moving it as he walks toward a conveyor belt. And you've got this little squeaky wheel that's It's like when you go shopping. And the director actually says in the audio commentary, the reason he put this squeaky wheel in there was because every time he goes shopping, he always gets a squeaky wheel and he hates it. So he wanted to put it in there. And I do actually remember when I was watching this at the cinemas, when that squeaky wheel was happening, I remember people laughing. And I know that that sounds trivial, but I just remember that because you've got this really serious opening. You've just watched 006 get shot and killed in front of Bond. And then this squeaky wheel's just like this as he moves from the side over to like this little conveyor belt. And that little bit of levity is perfect. It's needed in this moment. So anyway, Bond ends up escaping the facility on a little plane, which he jumps off the runway. He's on a motorbike. The plane goes over the edge with no pilot in it. This little like single engine plane goes over the edge. Bond jumps off on his motorbike down. He seems to be traveling faster than the plane. That's my only issue with this film. Gets inside the plane. At the last minute manages to fly up over the facility as the whole place just erupts. And then we go into the title song, which is Goldeneye by Tina Turner. And it is, wowee, it is fantastic. This is what I mean with this movie. We've got a brilliant opening. You've introduced Sean Bean as 006 and killed him. You've got Pierce Brosnan as 007. You've got this banging opening, massive explosion, killer, absolute killer title song, Goldeneye, which then shows the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall, the end of the Cold War pretty much. It shows all of that just with the way the actual song's playing out. You've got the Bond girls in there, the sexy women hammering down, breaking down walls, this and that. And then we jump forward 9 years. So we started off in, what would that be? That'd be 1986. The pre-title sequence begins. And then we jump forward 9 years. And we're now in Monte Carlo. James Bond is driving in his Aston Martin DB5. And he's driving in there with a woman named Caroline who's there to evaluate him. And as he's driving down the mountain and everything like that, this Ferrari comes up. And he's like looking at the Ferrari, and it's this like flirting moment between Bond and Caroline, the evaluator. But then Bond sees this Ferrari. And the Ferrari is driven by Xenia Onatopp, who's played by Famke Janssen. And she comes up, and then there's like that flirting between Bond and Xenia Onatopp, and actually have a race down the mountain. And if you look behind me, when I first started doing these videos, you would have probably noticed that I've always got a Ferrari there and an Aston Martin there. Now, the reason I've got that is because of this film. Although that Ferrari is not the one that Xenia Onatopp drives, that's the Aston Martin that Pierce drives, and that is a Ferrari, so I put it there as a little bit of a homage to this film. So anyway, they have this little flirty moment as they're driving down, narrowly avoiding other vehicles. Then there's some cyclists, and then Bond ends up pulling the emergency brake, stops. Xenia drives off towards Monte Carlo, and Bond and Caroline, do the deed. And then you've got Bond arriving at the casino in Monte Carlo, and he pulls up in his Aston Martin, and the casino scene alone is probably one of, barring Sean Connery's casino introduction in Dr. No, this casino scene, up to this point, is probably the best casino scene in any Bond film. Bar none. Pierce's introduction at the casino, at the tables, Xenia Onatopp's there. Bond introduces himself to Xenia. They start playing against each other in cards. There's more of a flirty exchange. We've got three things in common. I only count two: motoring and baccarat. And, then she's like, I hope the 30s where your real talent lies. And Bond's, one rises to meet a challenge. And it's completely full of innuendo. The sexual tension is there. They leave the table. He introduces himself as Bond, James Bond, which is chef's kiss the way Pierce does it.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
We find out Xenia's name, Xenia Onatop, and then Bond's like, Onatop. This entire scene is perfectly written, perfectly acted, perfectly scored by Eric Serra. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of his musical score in this movie. I happen to love it. I own the soundtrack. I love it. I don't care what anyone says. It fits this movie. It suits this more of a almost mid-90s industrial grunge feel to it. Yes, the music sounds exactly the same as Leon the Professional, which came a year before, which was also scored by Eric Serra. But I feel like it suits this movie perfectly. And actually, speaking of that, last night I went to dinner at my parents' house with my wife and my brothers and everyone was there. And my dad put on Leon the Professional. It was on Netflix. So they had that on a little bit. And I was just looking at the movie, and in the background I was listening to the music, and I'm like, oh, this is so Goldeneye. Like, you can tell that it's the same guy. But it fits that movie, and it fits this movie. And a lot of people have faulted the musical score in this film for not using the Bond theme enough, which, look, I don't think we need the Bond theme every moment that Bond does something like they were doing in the Sean Connery movies. I do think we need the Bond theme in the movies. I just don't think we need it as often. And we do get it later on in the tank sequence, but it's scored by a different composer for that scene. So maybe that's why the Bond theme appeared at that point. But going back to it, the music in this movie is fantastic. I'm a big fan of the musical score in this film. It is one that when I was younger, I never really had a TV in my room when I was younger. I used to just have a CD player, and this movie soundtrack, the score, would always be playing in my room. Even when I went to bed at night, I would have it on repeat. The whole CD would just repeat. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I feel like this movie here has fantastic direction by Martin Campbell, who, this is his first Bond film. His second is Casino Royale. So you know the type of caliber we're talking about here. So you've got brilliant direction by Martin Campbell. You've got fantastic acting throughout the whole movie. There's not a single person in this movie that is badly acted. And you've got great action throughout this whole film. You've got, like I said, we're in Monte Carlo at the casino. Bond and Xenia, part. Xenia has an awkward... Well, it's only awkward because every time this scene comes on with Xenia and not the commander. He's not the commander. This one's an admiral. So the admiral... Every time she's in bed with this guy and she's, eventually strangling him because, she's one of the bad girls in this movie, and her method of killing people is that she strangles them with her thighs. And she really, really gets off on physical harm to herself and others, killing people, and, well, that's about it. I think she covers all of that spectrum. She's just a bad woman. Incredibly sexy woman. Famke Janssen is absolutely beautiful, and in this movie, she's perfect in this movie. But every single time that scene comes on, it is an extremely awkward moment if, say, someone just walks in. Because it's like, yes, I'm watching a Bond movie. This scene is just believe me, I'm watching a James Bond movie. I'm not watching anything that you wouldn't find on TV. So it's always a little bit awkward, but... she ends up killing this guy. Bond hears from MI6 that Xenia Onatop is working with a group called Yanis. And, he's told to keep an eye on her, but do not approach her, pretty much. And the following morning, Bond actually goes to her boat, like a little cruise boat. He goes on the boat, finds the Admiral dead, because she killed him the night before during sex. Finds out that the Tiger helicopter that they're going to be showing off on a boat not too far from where her boat was, the Tiger helicopter is there, puts 1 and 2 together and rushes to this demonstration for this Tiger helicopter. And the Tiger helicopter in this movie can survive EMP blasts. So it has use and it has a reason. So anyway, Bond goes there, rushes. Xenia manages to steal the helicopter, flies away, Bond's arrested. And then the next time we see Bond, he's at MI6 in London. He's there with the brand new M, as played by Judi Dench. And again, this is the same continuity as previous Bond films. So in this continuity, Pierce Brosnan was married to Tracy at one point. He's had all of those experiences that all the other Bonds have had. It's just, we're in the 90s now. Just deal with it, I guess. And it's the end of the Cold War. Is Bond still relevant? Yeah, he is still relevant. And this Judi Dench is a woman. This M is played by Judi Dench, so obviously M is a woman. She's a hard ass. She puts Bond in his place many times, and I do enjoy the relationship that they have in this movie. When I watched it again recently, I said to my wife, hey, I think I'm going to put on Goldeneye in the theatre room tonight. And she's like, oh, okay. And we were having pizza, and I said to her, I'm just going to take the pizza in there like my slice. She goes, oh, I'll come in there and I'll watch it with you. And then after about 20 minutes, I'm going to get up and then go do some cross-stitching. My wife loves cross-stitching. She's got her own channel. Follow her if you haven't. And I said, yeah, that's no problems at all. So we're sitting down watching this movie, and I was pretty much saying about 80% of the lines from what I could remember. And 20 minutes passed, my wife was sitting down. Halfway through the movie, my wife is still sitting beside me watching it. The end of the movie comes, credits roll, my wife was still sitting beside me through the whole film. Didn't pull out her phone to do any research. She just sat there and watched the film, and I said to her, did you enjoy it? And she goes, yeah, I liked it. I've seen it before, but it was good to see it again. And watching it on the big screen again with the sound system on, and I'm hearing like gunshots in the back corners and the sound of the tank going through the streets of Russia, and you can hear the tire treads, well, not the tank treads ripping up the street. It felt like I'm watching this movie for the first time. And although we're in its 30th anniversary, Goldeneye is now 30 years old, 1995 to 2025 this year. It's 30 years old. This movie on screen still looks as good as I remember it being when I first watched it on VHS, only now I'm watching it in 4K. And I really struggle to pull up a fault with this film. Again, amazing. But the whole plot of this movie is that the organisation Janus is being run by Alec Trevelyan. Now, we believed Alec Trevelyan to be dead at the beginning of the movie. He wasn't. He was actually working with Oromov to, I guess, build up this company Janus, which is a two-faced Roman god, as they say later in the movie. And the moment that it's revealed that Alec Trevelyan, former MI6, former 00 agent, is Janus, it's a powerful scene when you watch Pierce Brosnan actually come to face with him, and their exchange is phenomenal. Now, I know that the trailers for this movie spoiled that reveal, but in 1995, if you saw Sean Bean in this movie and his name in the credits during the title or the title sequence, I think you must know that something's going on. You must know. It's like watching, a Law and Order and seeing a big name actors, as a special guest star. You know that they're part of the plot in some way, even if they haven't been revealed until halfway in the episode. And this is the same way. So for me, going into this movie, I always knew that Alec Trevelyan was the bad guy. I just didn't know to what capacity. And the whole idea with Janus is that there are these space satellites, well, obviously, that are EMP weapons, and they can disrupt the EMP range for like 20 miles. The whole idea is Janus wants to steal money from London, hack into the computer systems, pretty much rob them, and then he's going to set off this EMP device to wipe out all the records in London. And like Bond says, you're pretty much just a thief. You're a petty crook. You've got this big organisation, all you're going to do is be a thief. Like, compared to other villains that are going to detonate weapons on the planet and live in space, creating a new civilization, or living under the, in the ocean and things like that, this guy is just going to steal money. And you've got, Oromov's working for him, Xenia Onatop's working for him. all these different characters. You've even got this character called Boris, as played by Alan Cumming. Boris he's a systems programmer. He works in Seven Eye, who are the people that are pretty much monitoring, creating. They're working with the satellites, the Goldeneye satellites. And Boris is introduced in this movie. He's like what people think neckbeards are online. He's like, I don't even know how to explain it. He's an absolute idiot. He's a fool. He's a pig. Like, you need an access code to go into the program, and he uses, like the words boobs or knockers or something like that. He does all these types of stupid things. He thinks he's the best. He hacks into like the CIA, FBI, things like that. This is the type of guy you're dealing with. And of course, he starts working, or he is working with Yanis also, that group. So when Orimov and Xenia arrive at Seven Eye to steal the Goldeneye satellite, there's two Goldeneye satellites. They used one to destroy Seven Eye, and this is the scene where we're introduced to Natalia Semyonova, who is played by, and I'm going to try and get this right, Isabella Scorupco, who is gorgeous. She's introduced in this scene. She's just like a level 2 programmer. Boris is like smarter than her. He's everything. He's the best. And Xenia shows up with Orimov here. They've used the helicopter that they've stolen. They arrive at Seven Eye. They take the weapons. Xenia goes with a machine gun, kills everyone, all these different programmers that are working here, kills them all. Natalia manages to survive. They detonate an EMP at the location, which destroys everything, including 3 fighter jets that are coming to check out what's going on. As the EMP goes off, you see the helicopter flying away, and it's not affected by the EMP. So that's the whole reason they stole the Tiger helicopter. And back at MI6, Bond is watching this entire thing live with satellites as they see everything get destroyed. The satellites get destroyed too because the blast has gone off. And it's Bond's mission now to figure out what's going on, who stole Goldeneye, who stole the helicopter, and figure out who Yanis is. And then he goes to Russia, starts meeting up with other people, and the whole movie is just Bond trying to figure out what's going on. And all the encounters he has with a whole bunch of these other characters. I mean, you've got Jack Wade, who's a CIA, which I guess is kind of like a replacement for Felix Leiter. And he's actually played by a returning actor, Joe Don Baker, who was in The Living Daylights. So it's actually weird, because if Pierce got the original James Bond role for The Living Daylights, he would have actually worked with Joe Don Baker a second time if he'd still filmed Goldeneye. So it's actually really interesting. But Joe Don Baker comes in here. He plays Jack Wade, CIA. And I love his role. And something I only noticed when I was watching it this time is that he's obsessed with gardening. And he always calls James Bond Jimmy or Jimbo or something of that form. But I actually love in this movie, because every single time we see Jack Wade, the very first time we meet him, he asks Bond if he likes gardening. The next time we see him, he's dropping off a whole bunch of Q devices for Bond and the aeroplane that Bond uses to find the final Goldeneye radar dish, the satellite area at the end of the film. When he's there, he mentions about some of the trees around the area. And then the very third time we see him, which is just before the end credits, when he picks up Bond and Natalia, he again mentions about the trees that are around the area. He says something, I cannot remember the exact what he says, but he just mentions it briefly. And I'm like, was this in here by special request from Joe Don Baker, or is this meant to be a character trait? It was just a tiny little thing that just gives him that little bit extra character that, to me, just puts him a little bit above Felix Leiter, because Felix in every other movie has just been random person, random actor, you're Felix Leiter. He's always there. He doesn't really do much. except for in License to Kill. Obviously, he's a big part of that whole revenge movie. But in this one here, I don't know, I just love Jack Wade. He's awesome in this film, and I'm glad that he returns in Tomorrow Never Dies, the next Bond film. And I wish he would have returned for more. But anyway, you've got him, you've got the other character. Who's the other one? It's Robbie Coltrane. He plays Valentin Sokovsky. And Bond has to go to Valentin to kind of set him up, to set up a meeting between Bond and Yanis. He's trying to find out anything. He just needs to Bond needs to get closer to Yanis. And from that point on, once Bond lands in Russia, he starts meeting all the characters. The plot starts moving along. He ends up getting knocked out when he meets Trevelyan again. He's tied down in the actual Tiger helicopter where the rockets fly off and their target is the Tiger helicopters. They fly off. Bond is in the cockpit at the front. Natalia is sitting behind him. Bond's trying to escape as the rockets are flying off, turn in midair and then coming back for that Tiger helicopter. He manages to eject the cockpit, which flies up. They're arrested, interrogated. Bond escapes when Orimov actually kills the defense minister. Bond escapes with Natalia. Then she gets captured. Orimov gets Natalia, drives through the Russian streets. Bond commandeers a tank, drives the tank through the streets, chasing this little car, and then he puts it on the train tracks when this train is heading toward it, which has got, pretty much the head honchos of Yanis, Like I said, you've got Ali Trevelyan, who's the leader. You've got Orimov. You've got Xenia Onatop. And in there also, they've got Natalia. So Bond puts the tank on the tracks, shoots at the train, derails the train, breaks into the train, and then eventually from there they find out where the actual next satellite is that Yanis has got. Go there, and then we're pretty much at the end of the film. Bond ends up defeating Yanis, defeats Alec, and it's just, from beginning to end, I cannot say anything about this film that hasn't been said by thousands of others online, but for me, it is just, this is the Bond film that got me into Bond in a big way, and it meant, just watching it with my wife meant so much to me. And I honestly, I'm 41 years old. I watched this sitting on the couch on our big screen with the sound system going. I felt like I was 10 years old watching it. It was fantastic. And that is how I feel watching this movie. It takes me back. I know nostalgia is a big thing, but it doesn't detract from this movie being A++. This is, if I had to give a rating, this is like an 11 out of 10.
These go to 11.
This is an 11 out of 10, this movie. It is phenomenal. I really cannot put a fault to this movie. Everything about it, Pierce makes for such a fantastic Bond, and I'm so grateful that he got the opportunity to be Bond after losing out to Timothy Dalton because of the whole Remington Steele situation. So I'm so grateful that he came into this film, and it's just brilliant. Look, it may not be for everyone. Some people aren't massive fans of Pierce Brosnan, and I can understand that because he doesn't really feel like a unique Bond. He feels like a mix of all those that came before him, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I feel like we've gotten the perfect elements of every previous Bond mixed, and we've got Pierce, and he is one of the best. He's one of the best, and he is the current generation's Bond. Like, people my age, he's their James Bond. So, well done, everyone involved in this movie. I absolutely loved it, and I'm so happy that this film gets always the love it deserves. And you see it. I mean, if you check up anyone's favourite Bond films, in the top 5, Goldeneye is usually there. And it shows. You watch this movie from beginning to end, brilliant action, brilliant women, beautiful women, The only real thing it misses out on is like a vehicle sequence with Bond in his BMW, because he does have a vehicle when he goes to Q Branch and he meets up with Q, as played by Desmond Llewellyn, who is still here. And he does get the car explained to him, the BMW Z3. It's a Roadster. It is beautiful. It's got, Stinger missiles behind the headlights. It's got all these features that he starts talking to Bond about, but it's never used in the movie. And the reason is because the deal with BMW came really late in production, that they actually couldn't film a sequence for it in this film. So the only time you really see it is when Bond and Natalia are just kind of like, they're in Puerto Rico, I think it is, and they're just driving, and it's a really beautiful sunny day, and they're driving through the area, and then all of a sudden a plane comes down in front of them, and it's Jack Wade, and that's the end of the car. Now, we're going to get into the kill count. We're going to get into all that information now. And look, this movie here, you can obviously see there's a lot more action in this film. Bond's going around with machine guns all the time, but we're going to get into the kill count now. And these are only confirmed kills, because if you really take into account the Archangel Weapons Chemical Facility at the beginning of the movie, I'm sure when that place blew up, Bond would have taken out maybe 200 people just inside there. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about confirmed kills, ones that we can count on screen. And on screen, I counted 25 total. We have 20 Russian soldiers, General Oromov, he does kill him, a helicopter pilot, Xenia Onatop, and 2 Yanis guards. So he does not kill Alec Trevelyan. I don't care what anyone says. Alec Trevelyan is hanging. The satellite dish in this movie is fantastic, because it doesn't rise out of the water per se. It is the base of like this river, and the water from the river is covering the main dish. And it sinks down, the water just disappears, sinks into a gap of some kind, we don't know what, in the center of this dish. Out rises just the center part of the satellite that rises up. And Bond and Trevelyan are fighting because Bond has to, he's got to stop the communication from the base to the Goldeneye satellite that is making its way over London so it can detonate and they can steal everything. And even though Natalia has set the retro rockets for re-entry so the satellite will burn up, Boris is there, like crazy trying to stop it and crack the code. But Bond is going into the center of the dish up top to put like a metal rod through it so that it will just jam up and not be able to do anything. And during the fight with Alec Trevelyan, which is really intense with no music, they end up falling through the floor down this ladder to the very bottom, which is hanging, like 100, maybe about 100 meters from the bottom of the dish. They're hanging up top. And, Bond's holding Trevelyan by the leg as he's dangling down, and Trevelyan says to him, I cannot remember what he says, but Bond goes, "No, for me," and he lets him go, and you see Trevelyan fall. And you would think, he's killed him. No. Because when you next see Trevelyan, he's laying on the ground, looking up at the dish, kind of the array above him. He's looking at it, so he is alive, and then the dish crumbles, breaks, and falls on top of him as Boris is inside screaming, and the whole place just starts blowing up. So, but yes, so he didn't kill Alec Trevelyan. That much we can say. So, anyway, we've done the kill count, 25. Now for the locations visited, we've got 6. We've got USSR, which is Russia, Soviet Union area, and that's the Archangel Chemical Weapons Facility at the beginning of the film. Then we have Monte Carlo in Monaco, London, England, just for a brief bit. We've got St. Petersburg in Russia. We have Puerto Rico, where we see the BMW driving with Bond and Natalia. And we've got Cuba, which is the final area where the satellite dish is. And for women bedded, we have Caroline and Natalia Semyonova. And Caroline was the evaluator who was sent by M to evaluate Bond. And I guess his psychological state. It's kind of implied that she's there to evaluate him because of the incident at the beginning of the film with 006. But I think it's more maybe just because that's 9 years past. So I don't think she'd be evaluating him for 9 years or after 9 years. I think it's more just a general, hey, every year you need an evaluation to make sure that you're still right. And I haven't spoken much about Natalia, but she was the crush of many men, I am sure, and me also. And she's beautiful, and if you still look up this woman, Isabella Scorupco, she is still as beautiful as she was 30 years ago, and I'm sure she will continue to look beautiful in another 10 to 15 years, because I don't know what deal she's done, but she looks phenomenal. Now, that is the end of this review. I do not know if I've done this movie justice. I don't think I have, but it is my review, and I am happy with it, I guess. Like I said, Goldeneye, I could watch this every day for the rest of my life, and I've pretty much watched it every single day of this month, of this past month, and yeah, it's just wonderful. Brilliant. Love this movie. Will always love this movie. It is always my number one Bond film of all time, and it will continue to be my number one Bond film of all time. But the next film I am going to be reviewing will be Tomorrow Never Dies, which is Pierce Brosnan, again as James Bond, coming back for his second entry in the film saga. And I am looking forward to revisiting that, because it's not one of the Bond films that I go back to as often as the others, just on a single by single film basis. But I do have it on VHS back here in my little collection back there. I do have it. And yes, I do. I did enjoy it in the past, so let's see if I feel the same way in my next review. But until that time, I hope that everyone is taking care of themselves. Let me know in the comments how you're going, and if you've got any questions or thoughts on this video, let me know below. But until I see you next time, keep punching forward, keep moving, and take care of yourselves. I will return. Hello everyone, welcome back to another James Bond review. This time we are going to be reviewing Tomorrow Never Dies, the second entry in the Pierce Brosnan James Bond saga that we have going on. He was in 4 movies, he was a wonderful James Bond, and if you came from my last video, which was Goldeneye, you'll know how much I absolutely adored him in the role of James Bond, how much I adored that film and how special it was to me. Now, it's been a little bit of a while since I've actually last recorded, and not much new has changed. Now, for people that are new to the channel, hello, I am Ross. For people that have been here before, hello, I am Ross. For people that haven't subscribed, hello, I'm Ross. Subscribe. Do something with that little subscribe button down below, and give it a like if you feel the urge to do that for me. Now, Tomorrow Never Dies is, as I said, the second James Bond movie. It was released in the hectic period of 1997, which was around the same time that Titanic came out at the cinemas. Now, I'm not one to give history and retrospectives and things like that on movies. That's other channels. I can do that at some point, but I need a lot of time to do that, and a lot of research time and a lot of editing time. I don't have those things. This is a very bare bones channel. As you can see, I script, I stand in front of the camera, I operate the camera, the microphone, and I edit and I upload myself. Not very good at doing all of that, but I try my best. Now, as I said, this movie came out in 1997, which was 2 years after Goldeneye. And Goldeneye was pretty much a relaunch of James Bond to the modern audience. We hadn't seen James Bond at that point since 1989 with License to Kill. We had what was that? We had a 6-year gap before he returned as Pierce Brosnan returned as James Bond with Goldeneye, and then a 2-year period with Tomorrow Never Dies. And this is pretty much the first movie with James Bond that I watched at the cinemas after being a fan of James Bond. Now, I did see Goldeneye at the cinemas. I was a fan of James Bond after that, because of the video game, which really pushed it to the forefront of nerd levels for me. But this came after Goldeneye on the Nintendo 64, and it was like the big, big thing for me. I watched this at the cinemas. I don't remember much of my time watching it at the cinemas, but when it came out on VHS, I was watching it as many times as I could. Now, I do own it. It is back there. I think I've hit that correctly. It is back there. I do own it. I did own Goldeneye. I've lost that VHS for now, but I will one day reclaim it. But yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies was an absolutely... It was what's the correct way to say this? Probably for about 10 years after the movie came out, I loved Tomorrow Never Dies. It was a fun James Bond action spy thriller adventure. It had really fun action, a cool car chase sequence, a very sexy Bond women, but there was something about the movie that I wasn't so crash hot on, and that was the musical score by David Arnold. I didn't really enjoy the techno-themic type of score that he gave us, although it did really push to the forefront the James Bond theme, which is used so many times in this movie. The heavy use of, well, not even heavy use, the techno-inspired additions to the score, I wasn't so crash hot on. I really did like the kind of metallic, grungy, rough feel to the Goldeneye score. And this one here was a little bit polarizing for me. I really wanted another score like Goldeneye. I didn't get that, and we got this one in this film here. And it was a bit, I don't know how to feel about this. It's not to say I don't like David Arnold's score. There are some wonderful pieces in this movie, and the soundtrack alone is brilliant. But there was just something about it that I wasn't crash hot on. I wanted a classic Bond score, because at this point here I was kind of starting to watch the classic Bonds a little bit more, and this felt like a very abrupt change from the John Barry scores that I was now starting to listen to back in 1997. But I should begin. The movie Tomorrow Never Dies actually begins with 007 on a mission, and he's viewing like this terrorist arms deal. There's like a whole bunch of international terrorists, and they're all meeting together just off the Russian border, and it's this nice mountain, snowy area. There's jeeps, jets, massive amounts of vehicles, weapons, bombs, everything you can think of. There are a crap ton of terrorists all meeting up to do deals together and stuff like that. And while he's there, he's sending a transmission back to MI6. So M's there watching it, and she's got one of the rear admiral guys there for the Royal Navy, and he's there and he's watching it too. And they're like, well, we've got all these terrorists in this one place. Let's just bomb the whole thing. And M tells him, no, our guy's there, which is Bond. Let him get out of the area. And he's like, yeah, don't worry, the missile. So anyway, he gets in contact with one of like these battleships that's out on the ocean. I guess that's where battleships are. And he orders them to fire a missile at this terrorist organization meetup. So that goes off. That's now flying toward the area. And I do love those little brief Navy moments in this movie. But anyway, the missile goes flying off towards the area, and Bond's there, and they're telling him to get out of the area, and Bond's like, no, I can't get out of the area, and then reveals why. And there are these two fighter jets there that have parked on the runway, and mounted on one of the fighter jets are two nuclear torpedoes. And if the missile that's been sent from the battleship hits and blows up this area, the nuclear fallout will be absolutely devastating for all areas around this meetup. So they try and abort the missile. They can't. It's out of range. So they tell Bond, get the hell out of there now, but Bond's like, that's not going to happen. So he now goes through, kills a couple of people, blows up a few things, manages to get inside one of the jets, takes off down the runway, takes off just as the missile lands and explodes, and then has a fighter pilot attacking him from like where the co-pilot would sit behind him. So he's dealing with this co-pilot guy. At the same time, the other jet had taken off on the runway at the same time as Bond, and he's now shooting at Bond. So Bond's avoiding, machine gun fire inside the plane. It's a really cool sequence. And avoiding a guy trying to who is strangling him. Not trying to, this guy is strangling him. Bond's fighting this guy off, the co-pilot behind him, and then eventually manages to get out of sight of the enemy fighter pilot, gets underneath his jet, which is a really fantastic sequence. I love the way it's all filmed. Ejects the co-pilot out. He goes flying into the jet that's now above them, and then they go off and explode. And then we go into the title sequence, the theme song, which is Tomorrow Never Dies by Sheryl Crow. Sheryl Crow, Tomorrow Never Dies. It is a good theme song. It is just good. It doesn't sit in the top 10 for me. It doesn't even sit in the top 20 for me. It is a good James Bond theme song, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's got anything new or different or it's not exciting. There's nothing like... It doesn't do anything different that any other singer could have done. That any other singer couldn't have done, I should say. K.D. Lang does do a fantastic song in the credits of this movie, the end credits of this movie called, is it Surrender? Let's presume it's Surrender. If it's not, I'm going to pop up whatever it is on the screen. That was originally written, I believe, as the theme song for this movie, and David Arnold even used some of the familiar themes from Surrender, the K.D. Lang song, throughout this movie, throughout the musical score. And it's a really, really beautiful song to listen to, and K.D. Lang has got amazing vocals on her, and it pays off. So if you ever skip the final credits of a James Bond movie, just watch them for this song alone. I apologise, my cat is going ballistic down here because he's got his toy and he's playing with it. Anyway, so after we finish the Sheryl Crow Tomorrow Never Dies song, we go into the movie proper, which we start off, and it's actually on like a frigate, the HMS Devonshire, I believe it's called. And it's a British naval warship, and they are being kind of like warned by two Chinese MiG fighters that are flying above them and circling them, kind of thing. And they're warning the Royal Navy, like, hey, you're in Chinese waters right now. You need to leave because we can consider this almost like a threat and attack you. And the British are like, well, no, our GPS locations are matching up. We're actually in international waters. We're not in Chinese waters right now. We're safe. We're on course. There's nothing happening out of place here. But the Chinese MiG fighters are telling them, no, you're in our waters. This can be considered almost like a war threat. You need to leave our area. At the same time, on the water, we see this stealth boat. It's at night, so you can't see it, and it's not visible by radar to either the Chinese or the British. And this stealth ship is just kind of moving its way around the area. And on board the stealth ship, there's this massive, I guess it's called a sea drill in the movie, and it looks like, I don't know, like the size of a small car. And it's a drill, and they lower it down into the water, go for the Devonshire, the ship, and start ripping through the ship, ripping through all the areas to actually sink it. And they're going to sink the whole thing. The British think that it's actually a torpedo fired by the Chinese MiGs. The Chinese MiGs don't know what's going on, so the stealth ship shoots a missile from its own ship. It shoots a missile, blows up one of the Chinese MiGs, so now all of a sudden the Chinese are going to think the British have attacked us, and the British are going to think the Chinese have attacked us, and no one's going to know any different. But what's actually happening is the stealth ship is using a GPS encoder device to trick the Devonshire, the ship, the British ship, into thinking that they're in safe waters when actually they are, in fact, in Chinese waters. So they don't know, but the stealth ship's doing it. And the stealth ship is owned by a guy called Elliot Carver, who's like this, I guess, he's a media mogul. He runs a newspaper called Tomorrow. He's launching a news broadcasting network. He's pretty much like, who's that guy, that Fox guy that owns all those, the Fox media companies and everything like that? He's pretty much that guy there. And he's played by Jonathan Pryce. Jonathan Pryce plays Elliot Carver. He, in this movie, I absolutely hate him. I cannot stand the way he types on the keyboard, and he's got such a pretentious way of talking. I hate him, but in saying that, Jonathan Pryce does a brilliant job because I absolutely hate Elliot Carver. I cannot stand him. His whole mission in this movie is that he wants to actually start a war between the British and the Chinese. Then he wants to get a corrupt Chinese general called Chang into power to stop the war between the Chinese and the British, then give media, he wants to give broadcasting rights to Elliot Carver, and then Elliot Carver will have global broadcasting rights and all these things, and then be able to broadcast in China. It is a convoluted scheme that he's working on. He wants to start a war pretty much for media. And because of his newspaper called Tomorrow, once he attacks the MiG fighter and the Royal Navy and does all that stuff, he then posts it, or publishes it, I guess, the Tomorrow paper, with information that MI6 doesn't even have the full information of. So MI6 now knows, hang on a second, someone at Tomorrow knows this information, something's going on, they shouldn't have this information. So now Bond has to go to Germany, where Elliot Carver is at the moment, to find out who's doing it and what's going on, because they've realised that one of the satellites was involved in this, and it was a satellite owned by Elliot Carver. Now, Elliot Carver's wife, who's called Paris Carver, is played by Terry Hatcher, and she and Bond in the past had a romantic relationship. So as Em and Moneypenny say to Bond during their mission briefing in the car on the way to the airport, you need to cozy up to Paris Carver and then pump her for information. And then Moneypenny goes, you'll just have to... What's the correct term?
You'll just have to decide how much pumping is needed, James.
And it's a sequence that's... It's just... Look, it's a fun sequence. I do enjoy it. I like the fact that Bond looks a little bit uncomfortable with Moneypenny and M bringing up his past love life and telling him pretty much, you need to have sex with this woman and really get all the information you can out of her. Especially considering in Goldeneye, the movie prior, Moneypenny's telling Bond that what he says to her could be considered sexual harassment in the workplace. And anyway, it's a fun sequence. I like it. It's filled with innuendo. It's good to see Pierce Brosnan look not only a little bit upset, but also a little bit intimidated by these two women saying this to him. And then when Bond gets to Germany, he's met by Q, who's posing as like a car rental insurance guy. Bond gets his brand new BMW, which is a family sedan, absolutely packed with weapons, a mobile phone to control the car. It's got everything. Self-inflating tyres, bulletproof glass. The mobile phone is more packed than the car. It's got everything. It is like they made up for what Goldeneye was missing, which was a car chase sequence. they put it into this film here. Anyway, as the movie plays on, Bond eventually gets introduced to Elliot Carver, and I think within the first 3 minutes of meeting, he pretty much tells him, I know what you did to the Royal Navy ship, and I know what you did to the MiG fighters, and I'm going to take you down. And Bond is introduced at this party, at this big media, event. He's introduced to Wei Ling, who's played by Michelle Yeoh, the very beautiful Michelle Yeoh. Very young looking too in this movie, wow. And she's we don't know at this point, we find out a bit later on, she's a Chinese secret agent, and she's also investigating Elliot Carver. And throughout the events of the movie, we find that they have to start working together. They investigate the Devonshire, which was sunk by Elliot Carver's stealth ship in the movie. They find that one of the missiles is missing, and they're going to use that missile at the end of the film, because there's like a 48-hour timer that Bond is working on, where the British fleet will arrive at the Chinese waters, and then World War III is pretty much going to start. So they're pretty much telling Bond, you've got 48 hours to stop this, or else this will happen. So they're going to use one of the missiles, Elliot Carver. He's going to use one of the missiles that he stole from the Devonshire to entice the Chinese into starting a war with the British Navy. And I absolutely love when Bond and Michelle Yeoh, because they are working together and they figure out that there is a stealth ship involved. They get onto the stealth ship in the movie, start planting bombs, start blowing it up. And because they've started to blow it up, it's now visible to radar. And as the British Navy all of a sudden start seeing this ping on the radar that wasn't there originally, and the Chinese communicate with the British and say, hey, we're going to let you deal with this. We'll stay here. You deal with this. So the British are like, you know what? Let's just fire everything we've got at this stealth ship. Let's bring it down. And they certainly do help, but Bond walking around inside the stealth ship with a machine gun in one hand and his Walther P99 silenced in his other hand, doing double shots at people. He goes on a killing spree in this movie. Pierce in this movie, I think, takes out the most amount in any James Bond film up to this point. Look, I have such a smile on my face. I mentioned a little bit earlier that for the first 10 years that this film came out, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really fun, entertaining James Bond film. It didn't really do anything special. It didn't really do anything that offended me. It was just a really fun movie. Then for about 15 years, I absolutely couldn't stand this film. I would have put it right next to Diamonds Are Forever at the bottom of my James Bond list. And I was really sour on this movie for so many years. I didn't like anything about it. I hated the score. I hated the direction of the way that the movie was directed. I didn't like the action sequences with the slow motion added in. I didn't like any of that. I didn't like the forced kind of, almost like they were trying to be filled with innuendo. I didn't like any of that. I absolutely hated it. And then, I don't know what it was. It was like, I watched the movie again. I think it might have been actually 2024. I did a James Bond rewatch, and I watched them 3 times in 1 year. All the James Bond movies. And every time I came to Tomorrow Never Dies, I'm like, oh my God, I'm really liking this movie. I'm really actually enjoying this film. I know it's got like problems. I know it's not a bad movie though. And I know it's not a great movie. It was kind of like dead center for me. It was like, all right, it's definitely not Goldeneye. It's not going to live up to the Goldeneye hype that we had. But there is nothing wrong with this film. It's got, as I said, good action, fantastic car chase sequences. There's a brilliant BMW motorbike sequence in this movie where Bond and Wei Ling are handcuffed together and they escape a Carver Media building. And they go down the side of the building, holding onto the ropes of a massive poster, break in through the window, walk through the office building. It's a really fun sequence. Run downstairs, steal a motorbike, and Bond is on the front of the motorbike. Michelle Yeoh is behind him, and he's got his handcuff like that, and she's got her arm holding the other side of the motorbike. So he's doing one thing, she's controlling the clutch. She's constantly like moving to the front of him, and then she'll move to the back of him. They're outrunning them. They've got Elliot Carver's henchmen are in helicopters coming after him. They've got vehicles coming after him. It's a fun sequence, and watching it in the last couple of years, I've just realised how much I actually enjoy this movie, and it feels like I remember when I watched what was it called? The Man with a Golden Gun. And I am going to compare these two movies in a small way. So Man with a Golden Gun, when I watched it this year, originally for my review, I was a little bit sour on the movie. I didn't really like it that much. I wasn't having a good time with it. And then someone in the comments told me, you really need to rewatch it again, pretty much. It was a fun movie. It was really enjoyable. So before I started watching The Spy Who Loved Me, I rewatched Live and Let Die Again, The Man with the Golden Gun, and then I started watching The Spy Who Loved Me. And the second time I watched The Man with the Golden Gun, I was absolutely in love with it. I just found it to be a really good villain, a fun basic plot. Roger Moore, ever dependable, brilliant. And that's how I feel about Tomorrow Never Dies. I compare it to The Man with the Golden Gun because that's how I feel with this movie. Pierce Brosnan is brilliant. You've got two beautiful Bond women in the way of Terry Hatcher and Michelle Yeoh. Absolutely spot on there. You've got some fun action sequences right at the beginning of the movie. You've got the car chase sequence, the escape from the Carver's media building. You've got the motorbike sequence. You've got the little jet area. You've got the Devonshire boat attack and everything like that. You've got a great, although I hate him, you've got a good villain. He's just good. He's a good villain. And you've got a good henchman in the way of Stamper, who is a guy that's just like that big, tall, blonde henchman that's just like invincible. Bond stabs him, Bond punches him. This guy doesn't care. And it's fun. It's a really fun and exciting movie. And I'm really glad that I've taken a little bit longer to review it because I have watched it. My wife actually asked me the other day, which Bond film are you up to now? And I said, Tomorrow Never Dies. And she goes, haven't you watched that like 10 times? And I said, actually, I've watched it about 15 times beginning to end in the last month. And that is no word of a lie. I have really enjoyed my time with Tomorrow Never Dies. It's not in my top 10. It's not in my bottom 20. It just sits right in the middle. It is a fun action film. And I say it's more action because there is a lot of action in this movie. And you can kind of see that the Pierce Brosnan era of Bond really did slowly go from a spy thriller adventure to more of an action adventure feel with his movies. Nothing wrong with that. Really, 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 really good time with Tomorrow Never Dies. If you haven't seen it in a while, watch it. I absolutely loved it. I'm sure that there's things that I'm missing. There is, what's his name? Dr. Kaufman. Dr. Kaufman is a guy that is ordered by Elliot Carver to kill his wife, Paris Carver, inside Bond's apartment. And this guy what does he say? He's like he can make anything look like a suicide, he reckons. And he's really good with the, the celebrity tapes, like the celebrity overdoses. And it's a fun sequence where he's pretty much said, I've killed her, I'm going to kill you, Mr. Bond, and I'm going to make it look like a murder-suicide. And the way Bond gets out of it, he uses his mobile phone, and if you push a combination of buttons at the bottom of the mobile phone where the charging port is, two little electro prods come out and it works as a taser. And Bond uses that to kill Kaufman, or uses it to stun Dr. Kaufman, and then uses the gun and kills him because he's a professional and he's just doing his job. So there's all these little fun bits in this movie. It's a highly enjoyable film. Tomorrow Never Dies. Really glad that I took a little bit of extra time to enjoy this film. Now, I'm going to get on to the kill count. And it is a fair bit. So the Bond kill count is 23. Bond has an absolute murderous amount of people in this movie. He takes on everyone. So he does a lot of killing in this film. And like I said, when he's in the the stealth ship at the end of the film, and he's got the machine gun and he's the P-99 silenced, I love that little sequence there. But then he's got like a rocket launcher that he shoots the hydraulics of it, and he's going around, he's just firing it and just blowing people up. Also really fun. We've got locations visited. So the locations, I've got 5 here. I've got the Russian border, hard to pinpoint where. London, England, obviously. We go to Hamburg, which is in Germany. The US Air Base in the South China Sea, where we get to meet up with Jack Wade in his second and final appearance. And Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Ho Chi Minh City. So 5 different locations. And then for ladies bedded, we actually have 3. We have the professor who Bond is sleeping with when he's first contacted by Moneypenny. And as she calls Bond, you always were a cunning linguist. Anyway, we have Paris Carver and we have Wei Ling. And I just want to talk a little bit about Michelle Yeoh in this film, because I had no idea who she was before I watched this film. I watched her in this movie, did a little bit of research afterward, found out she was pretty big in Chinese movies and things like that with martial arts. Really enjoyed her in this movie. I really liked her chemistry with Pierce Brosnan in this movie. And I've become a pretty big fan of hers since then. Michelle Yeoh, yeah, she's really good here, and I love the fact that they don't play her up as a helpless woman. I mean, she does get saved by Bond at the very end, but up until that point, she's holding her own and she's taken out. There's a whole sequence where they invade her like little safe house, and Wei Ling takes out I think it's 5 guys on her own. She's just knocking them all over the place, kicking them off ladders, off stairs. It's really fun sequence. So, look, it's not my longest review, but in conclusion, I will say Tomorrow Never Dies. Absolutely had a great time. Get onto it if you haven't yet. Hell of a time with this movie. The next film we're going to be reviewing is The World Is Not Enough, or Twine as some people call it, which is Pierce's 3rd Bond entry. And I've got a whole story behind that one there when I went to go see it if you care about it, but I'll get into that when I get into that. Until then, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate you here. If you want to give a like or subscribe if you haven't, by all means, even leave a comment down below. I really do appreciate it. So thank you very much. I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you next time. Ross will return.
You always were a cunning linguist, James.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another review by me, Ross. I'm Ross and you are most likely named Fred. If you're not named Fred, leave your name in the comments down below and I'll say hello to you. In this review, we are talking about The World Is Not Enough, the 3rd entry for Pierce Brosnan in the James Bond films, the 19th James Bond movie overall. Can you believe it? 19 James Bond movies from 1962 to 1999. We're not counting the unofficial ones. I don't want to talk about those. We're talking about the James Bond movies. 1999, this movie came out. It was 2 years after Tomorrow Never Dies, and it's, been like 4 years since Goldeneye. And it is the 3rd Pierce Brosnan movie. Now, a lot of people say that the 3rd is sometimes considered the best in the James Bond films. You've got Sean Connery had Goldfinger, which is his 3rd, and a lot of people say that was his best. And for Roger Moore, you had The Spy Who Loved Me was his 3rd, and again, a lot of people say that was his best. Timothy Dalton didn't get that opportunity, and George Lazenby only got 1. So now we're here with Pierce, and he's given us The World Is Not Enough. Now, 1999 was a year that I actually remember quite well. It was the year that I turned 15. It was also the year that I started working at a video store, Video Easy, I started working at in Melbourne. And the reason that's so important to me is because I was an absolute film freak. I loved movies. I wanted to write my own movies. I would always be writing. And it is also where my love of James Bond from the Goldeneye 64 video game and then the Goldeneye movie and then watching them and, starting to watch them. At this point, it was my obsession with James Bond was at its peak. Leading up to The World Is Not Enough, I remember watching all the trailers, all the TV spots as they would pop up on TV. I was hyped. I was waiting for this movie. From memory, it came out in Australia in late November. And the only reason why that does kind of seem to fit with me is because I was in year 10 in high school in Australia. And we were doing like mock exams. It was just a way of getting people prepared for the next year of high school, I guess. And me and my friends, I had a group of like 5 friends that I was really close with, and we were all hyped for this movie. A few of us had the Nintendo 64, and a few of us also had Goldeneye, and every time we would meet up at a friend's house, we would get stuck into the game and play multiplayer, and there would always be that one guy that would use Odd Job. But we would always play the game, and we were absolutely hyped. Now, Tomorrow Never Dies, not many people were kind of like talking about that. I had the game on PlayStation, on the PS1, but GoldenEye 64 was still being played multiplayer-wise for the Nintendo 64. So leading up to The World Is Not Enough release, me and my friends all decided, you know what? We're going to finish our exams at like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Why don't we just walk to the cinemas? None of us could drive. Get tickets and watch the film on the release date. And that's what we did. That's what we did. So leading up to this movie, leading up to The World Is Not Enough, I was in peak Bond nerd mode. At this point, I had seen probably 90% of the James Bond movies on whether it be VHS or at this point DVD. I was absolutely pumped. GoldenEye at this point was my favourite James Bond. Pierce Brosnan was my favourite James Bond at this point, and I was like just over the moon. And I remember finishing exams or our mock exams, waiting for my friends at the front of the school. We all grabbed our water bottles and we just started walking to the shops. Now, in November in Australia, it's just before summer, but it is exceptionally warm as soon as the sun hits you. Like even today, it is 20 degrees, but if you were to stand in the sun for 5 minutes, your skin would just go bright red and begin to burn. And we didn't care. We walked all the way, like I said, it was 30 minutes, probably about 5 kilometers. We walked from where we were at the school all the way up to the shopping center, purchased our tickets, sat down. All of us were just absolutely stuffed from this walk, but we sat down, the movie kicked in, and all of us were silent throughout this whole movie. Some of us cheered, some of us laughed, some of us weren't too fond of the film, but whatever it is, we reacted to this movie at all points, and it was a phenomenal experience. Now, because I was also working at the video store part-time at this point, there was what you would get called loop tapes. And these loop tapes were like for the month of November, and it would be all the highlights, movie trailers, music videos, just advertisements for movies that were coming up on a cassette tape, VHS, and we would put it in the VHS, in the video player, and it would just play on loop tape. It would play on loop in the store. And because The World Is Not Enough was coming out, it just had like a 5-minute feature on The World Is Not Enough, but also on James Bond in general. And it also had the music video for the song The World Is Not Enough by Garbage, which is in this film. And it was just constantly in my head. It was constantly playing, and I was just like, I'm just so excited for this movie. Like, it needs to hurry up. And now it's been, what? It's probably been 26 years since that moment. And do my thoughts on The World Is Not Enough still hold up? Do I still think that it is one of Pierce's best? Do I still watch this movie with pure excitement? Am I still enthralled by everything that happens? Do the twists and turns still get me? Short answer, yes. I watched this movie a few times leading up to this review, and I watched it actually in my theatre room, and when I was watching it, the opening sequence of the movie, which was at this point one of the longest opening sequences in any James Bond movie, just had me with a smile. Like, I was just smile from ear to ear watching the first 20 so minutes of this movie, and the rest of the movie, in fact. It really did take me back to that 1999 day when I was with my friends and we were just watching this film together. It really did mean a lot to me. So let's get into the story a little bit. The movie begins with Bond. He actually goes to Spain and he's meeting up with a Swiss banker, and he's trying to retrieve some money for Sir Robert King, who happens to be a friend of M. And while he's there, there's a bit of a fight breaks out. Bond gets the guy and begins interrogating him, and he wants to know who had the money, where did it come from, pretty much who's in charge of this operation. And this guy is about to say something, and then he gets killed. And Bond's in this room, the police are coming, they're going to come after Bond. Bond actually has a fight with another guy, grabs like a bungee cord, straps it to this guy, dives out the window with the money, and he falls out the window, and this guy's like coming to, but he's trying to stop himself from flying across the room, but Bond ends up going to the ground, untightening it, and just walks off. And eventually we go back to MI6. Bond's there with M and Sir Robert King. He's looking at the money. So Robert King thanks him, M thanks him, and while M and Bond are having a bit of a drink, Bond's hands react to something that was on the money, and instantly he bolts through MI6 yelling for people to stop Sir Robert King. And then when Robert King opens up the briefcase, the money just explodes in the whole area and he dies. And we find out that there's a person out on the, I think it's the Thames River, the Thames, I think it might be, whatever it is, correct me. But out on the Thames River, where the MI6 building is this speedboat. And inside the speedboat is a woman who is kind of affectionately referred to as the Cigar Girl. And she was actually in Spain in the room when Bond was trying to get the deal with the money from the Swiss banker. And she's there, she's got a machine gun rifle and she's aiming it at Bond. And just as she fires, Bond ducks out of the way, goes to Q, gets his boat and launches out of MI6 and has this brilliant chase on the Thames, on the water there, against this speedboat. And the Cigar Girl is trying to duck and weave and she's diving out of the way and she's using her speedboat and she's going for it, and Bond is just chasing along, and there are some amazing moments where he uses the water, the ripples in the water, and he dives off it, and as he dives off it he's bouncing all over the place like that, and she's shooting at him and everything like that. And Bond's Q boat, he's got like these torpedoes, he's got GPS tracking locations and everything. It's a really fun sequence. One of my favorite moments is Bond does this jump and he comes just over the boat. Now, as he does it, he does this corkscrew jump, and then so corkscrew spins through and lands on the water and just speeds off past the boat and then comes back around. And it just, first of all, it reminded me of The Man with the Golden Gun when Bond does the corkscrew jump in the car over the bridge. But it was just such a fantastic little moment. I was absolutely blown away. And I remember that sequence, that stunt alone, always been on all of the ads that were running, all of the promos for this movie. That stunt, that corkscrew boat flip, was one of the ones that was always shown. And another wonderful sequence that I absolutely love is the boat's got like a submarine mode. So Bond is going after the cigar girl. She's gone through, the bridge is closed down, and because the bridge is closed down, Bond's not going to get underneath it. So he puts it into like submarine mode, dives underwater, and while he's dived underwater, typical Pierce Bond, he adjusts his tie like that as he's going under. And I love it because that just seems to be a thing that Pierce Brosnan does, especially in this movie. I noticed it, and also in Goldeneye when he's in the tank through the Russian streets, he adjusts his tie like that also. So it seems to be a little thing that he does, but it's a fantastic little sequence because even going underwater, you just see he's just being nice and proper and just making sure that his tie is all adjusted. I also love the fact that you see Pierce Brosnan actually doing a bit of this driving on the Thames himself, which is great that it's not always just a stunt guy, that it is Pierce doing it too, which is fantastic. So anyway, the sequence comes to an end when Bond shoots a couple of like little torpedoes at the speedboat. She drives off course, ends up getting into a hot air balloon, which has got gas canisters on the side of it. Bond launches up off his speedboat, grabs onto one of the ropes, the awning ropes, and he's holding onto it. And all he wants from this woman is a name. Who done this? Who organised all this? And she's telling him, I can't tell you. If I tell you, he'll kill me. And Bond's like, we'll protect you. We will protect you. Just don't do it. She ends up getting her gun, aiming it, holding it right at the gas canisters and shoots them. And just before the hot air balloon blows up, Bond lets go, falls down, and as he's falling down the side of this building, he's grabbing onto the ropes. And I do like the fact that the stuntman, when they were filming this sequence, he actually missed the rope on his first grab. He was meant to grab it the first time, he missed it, and then ended up grabbing it on the second time. And because of that, they just left it in the film, and it does look really like when he finally grabs onto this ropes that's there, you actually feel like there's a bit of pain coming from this guy. But it's great. And once this sequence comes to an end, Cigar Girl, unfortunately, she dies without giving Bond a name. And then it cuts to the title sequence, which is, as I said before, The World Is Not Enough by Garbage, which I really love this song. Like, I own the soundtrack for this movie, and when I was younger, I never had a TV in my room. I only ever had a cassette player and a CD player. And because I owned the CD for this movie, I would have the soundtrack on loop, on repeat, all the time. And this theme song, The World Is Not Enough by Garbage, is anything but garbage. It's fantastic. It's a phenomenal soundtrack. It's a phenomenal song. It's really good. Like, it actually does work perfectly, and the images that come over the credits are women in like oil and things like that, because that's Sir Robert King, who died. He was an oil tycoon, so it's fitting for the movie, and it is about oil pipelines and everything like that, so it fits with the motto of the film. So well done. Music in this movie, really good. David Arnold, who returns from Tomorrow Never Dies, also returns to score this movie. And he does an absolutely wonderful job here. Actually, I like this score, The World Is Not Enough, much better than I did Tomorrow Never Dies. Tomorrow Never Dies to me felt too techno. It felt like it had too much electronic music going on, whereas The World Is Not Enough, or Twine, whatever you prefer to call it, it just feels a little bit more classical music, but it still has that electronic beat to it. But I don't mind it so much here because it's more subtle. It's not as in your face as Tomorrow Never Dies was, and the Bond theme in Tomorrow Never Dies isn't played nearly as much in this film as it was in Tomorrow Never Dies. So I feel like this is probably David Arnold's best musical score, not to give anything away for his future soundtracks that he does. But after that, we cut back to Bond and M, who are at the funeral for Sir Robert King, and we finally meet Electra King, who is the daughter of Sir Robert King. And M, being a good friend of Sir Robert King, is also a friend of Electra King, and Electra thanks M for being such a good friend to her father, and Bond is there, and Bond's got his arm in a sling because when he fell down the dome area before, he injured one of the tendons in his arm, in his shoulder, so he's kind of injured. And what happens in this when they're at their, like, I think it's in Scotland, they're at their safe house in Scotland, MI6 has got a Scotland setup going on there, is Bond actually does a little bit of snooping around. Because he wasn't given a mission briefing, he's like, well, you know what, I'm just going to do a little bit of snooping. So he starts snooping around, and he works out that the money that was in the briefcase that he retrieved in Spain is equal to the exact amount of money that Sir Robert King was asked to give when his daughter was held hostage by a man named Renard years ago. So that's what's going on in this moment. So what you find out is that Sir Robert King and his daughter Electra King, Electra was kidnapped when she was younger. We don't know. I don't know how many years it is exactly. They might say it in the film, but it's not with me at the moment. So she was kidnapped by a man named Renard, and he was holding her hostage for a sum of money. M convinced Sir Robert King not to negotiate, not to give in to the terrorists, pretty much. So he didn't give the money in. And eventually Electra King escaped. She used her ways of seduction to seduce the men there, and she managed to escape. And we find out that the money that, as I said, was in the suitcase was the exact amount of money that was asked in the ransom. So Bond now knows these two incidents are actually connected. The same man, Renard, is behind this. And we find out that Renard was, after this incident, M sent a 00 agent to kill Renard, but all he managed to do was shoot him in the head. And the bullet is slowly travelling to his through to his brain, but as it does so, it's cutting off pain receptors. So this guy in one sequence picks up a hot coal, like a burning hot coal, and he's holding it in his hand, and he doesn't even feel the pain. And I mean, that's how he is. And he's played by Robert Carlyle, and he's wonderful in this movie. I mean, I've preferred him in other films, but not to knock the guy, he's still really good in this film. So Renard, we find out, is pretty much tying up loose ends. He's gone after Sir Robert King and killed him. And Bond says to M, well, he might be going after Electra King now. So M says, well, your mission is shadow Electra, but most important of all, don't let her know that Renard is behind this, because we can't have her knowing that. So Bond then travels to Azerbaijan and all these other locations with Electra King when he meets her back. And Electra King, played by Sophie Marceau, is beautiful. When it comes to Sophie Marceau, there's just something about her. She's got almost like this, she's got like this old Hollywood beauty to her, if that makes any sort of sense. She's absolutely beautiful in this, not just in this movie, but in general. She's wonderful. She plays the part. She's deadly. Like, spoilers ahead, but she's the bad guy in this movie. She's the main villain. We don't know that at the beginning, but when Bond eventually meets up with her, we find out that, she's taken over her father's oil pipeline, and she's going to continue the pipelines and everything like that, and she wants to continue his work, and, she's grateful for Bond for what he did, but she doesn't need his help, and Bond's like, look, you do need my help. There are people trying to kill you. He doesn't tell her Renard, but he goes, there are people trying to kill you. So anyway, they go to check out one of the pipelines, and it's in these snowy, mountain area. So Bond and Electra are skiing together, and it's fantastic. It's a great little sequence. They're just being kind of flirty. They're talking and this and that. And in the background, all of a sudden, you see these kind of I don't know what they're like ski paragliders, and they've got parachutes, but with massive fans on them. and these guys are, let's call them paragliders. These paragliders are coming after Elektra and Bond, trying to kill them. And they're dropping grenades from the sky. And Bond tells Elektra, go for the trees. Just go, I'll take care of him. So Bond doesn't have his guns or anything like that. So he's skiing, he's avoiding them. He manages to lose a couple of them, kill a couple of them. And there's this one really good sequence where Bond jumps off the cliff, and as he's doing it, he uses his ski pole, the bottom of it, and swipes at the actual parachute, and it splits it in half, and this guy just goes and flies off into another one and kills him. But there's also a really good sequence where one of the guys like rips the cable for his parachute. He goes on the snow down after Bond, and there's a cliff down there, like ahead, and Bond slides just out of the way just in time, and you're like, oh, what a kill he's gonna get. And then all of a sudden this paraglider flies off the cliff, and as it's falling down, Bond's looking at it, and then all of a sudden a parachute comes out the back and he starts flying again. And it's just this humbling moment, because normally in a Bond film, Bond can just get these kills and it's like, how are you getting these? And in this film here, you think to yourself, oh, what an absolute legendary way to get this guy. And then all of a sudden the parachute comes out and you're like, oh, well, I guess he didn't get that kill. And yeah, it's a fun little sequence. Bond ends up defeating them all, and you end up, Elektra decides, okay, maybe there are people trying to kill me. The plot continues where Bond ends up finding Renard, who's trying to steal like some plutonium from a nuclear core, the plutonium from a nuclear core, and he manages to get away. Renard actually gets the plutonium, escapes, and in this sequence here we meet Dr. Christmas Jones, who's played by Denise Richards. And in 1999, she was one of the hottest things around. She was like Wild Things and Starship Troopers. There was also another movie she was in, not Drop Dead Gorgeous. There was another movie she was in. She was like a cheerleader or something like that at a high school. I remember watching that at the video store. That was actually pretty good. But she was a very, very in demand when it came to men. And when she appeared in this film, knowing that she was in it, when she appeared in this film, I just remember a couple of my mates and I were cheering in the cinema. But she plays a nuclear physicist, and she's a doctor, and she tells Bond, my name is Dr. Christmas Jones, and I don't want to hear any jokes about it. I've heard them all. And Bond's like, oh, I don't know any doctor jokes. And it's a fun little moment. But anyway, Renard ends up escaping with the plutonium. Dr. Christmas Jones and Bond both escape. So what I like about this moment is that when Bond is on his knees in front of Renard and Renard's got his gun ready to kill Bond, he pinches Bond's shoulder. And maybe 15 minutes earlier in the movie, when Elektra and Bond are sleeping with each other, she touches his shoulder and she makes a comment about it. So when Renard grabs and pinches his shoulder to cause pain to Bond, he then says something, there's no point in living if you can't feel alive. And he says that to Bond, which was also something that Elektra said to Bond. So in that moment, Bond's like, huh? Hang on a second, what's going on here? And when he escapes that area, he actually confronts Elektra, and he, pretty much tells her, you killed your father, you and Renard are working together, and I'm going to prove it. At that point, because Bond had vanished for a while, M was called, and she's now there with Elektra, and Judi Dench obviously gets a much larger role in this movie, which is a good thing because she does play M in this movie almost like a mother figure. I know everyone says M is like the mother figure to Daniel Craig's Bond, but I think it started in this film here, where she's not so much as just a boss to Bond, she's more of a mother figure, a nurturing figure, and you see that with Elektra and you see that with Bond in this movie. And so she's there, and Bond tells M, hang on a second, don't trust this woman, there's something wrong. And M's like, what are you talking about? At that same moment, you find out that an alarm has gone off in one of the oil pipelines not too far from where they are. And Elektra says, if you think I'm involved, why would I want to blow up my own pipelines? And Bond's like, well, I need to go out there and check. So he and Dr. Jones go out there. They're on these, like, they call it a pig, I guess. And they're on these contraption on the inside of the tunnel. And it's like this super quick, speedy platform that they lay down on. And they're going for this other one that's in there. And that, they find out, has got the plutonium on there that was stolen. But only half of the plutonium, the half of the plutonium core is there. So Bond's like, what are they doing with the other half? What's going on? Anyway, Dr. Jones manages to disable the plutonium part of the bomb, so it won't be deadly as deadly. But Bond tells her, let the bomb blow up. We need them to think that we're dead. And she's like, are you crazy? Bond's like, trust me, just do it. The bomb goes off. They manage to get out safely. And Bond tells her, look, there is something going on. I do not trust pretty much Elektra King. Something's going on. And we do find out eventually Elektra talks with M and hands M this lapel, which was Sir Robert King's lapel. And it turns out that inside the lapel that Robert King was wearing when he died was a micro receiver. And that micro receiver reacted with the money, and that's what caused the detonation. So Elektra hands the actual one to M, and that's when M realizes, oh, so she did kill her father. They capture M, put her in like a little jail cell, and they pretty much say to her, we're going to blow up the pipelines of opposing people, like the opposing pipelines, so then only Elektra King's oil pipelines will be left, and then she'll have this monopoly over all of Europe and everything like that. She'll have all of the oil pipelines, the only ones left. And she's using Valentin Zukovsky. Yes, Valentin Zukovsky returns. They're using his nephew, who is like a submarine commander, a captain of a submarine. They're using one of his submarines and they want to detonate the rest of the plutonium in Istanbul, hoping that that will destroy the rest of the pipelines and then only Elektra has hers left. And they would get away with it if it wasn't for Bond. So anyway, Bond ends up rocking back up, kills Elektra King, which is just really... that. I remember watching that in the cinema and I'm like, whoa. He just like pulls the gun and bang, shoots her. He doesn't even care that M's there. And then goes after Renard, who has kidnapped Dr. Jones. So Bond dives down into the submarine, gets in there, ends up killing Renard, escapes the submarine through the torpedo tubes. He escapes with Dr. Jones. They manage to prevent the other pipelines from being destroyed, and then ends up in Istanbul with Dr. Jones, and the movie ends. And look, I really enjoy this movie. I mean, it's not Pierce's best. Goldeneye is still number one. But this one is easily his next best James Bond movie. I like the direction with this movie. I like that it's a little bit more of a serious tone than what Tomorrow Never Dies was. It feels... I mean, Tomorrow Never Dies had a lot of script issues. And only knowing that when I watch the movie, I know that there are issues with the script. This one, he feels very tight. Like, you can tell that a lot of care was taken to make Elektra King the villain. Like, Renard is her henchman in this movie. He's played up as the main bad guy, but at the end of it all, it's Elektra King. She's the puppet master here. It turns out that when she was kidnapped, she actually, as Bond puts it, it was Stockholm Syndrome, but she actually seduced Renard, and in the movie, she cuts off the earlobe, the bottom part of her ear, and sends it back to her father saying, hey, we're serious. She was the one that cut her own ear because Renard didn't want to do it. He loved her. And there is actual love between these characters. It's not her just using him. They are in love. Elektra is in love with Renard. Renard is in love with Elektra. And she's orchestrated this whole event, the event of these movies. She's orchestrated. And I love that. And I I understand that Bond in this movie fell in love with Elektra, because he does mention it when he's talking to Dr. Jones, Dr. Christmas Jones. He does mention that he was in love with Elektra. Not so much saying the words, but he says now it's only platonic between them, which implies that it wasn't platonic before. And I do appreciate the fact that the filmmakers dressed Elektra King in such a way that she was reminding Bond of Tracy from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I always had a bit of an issue with that, because I'm like, oh, how would Elektra King know that Bond was married and this and that? Well, she would. I mean, if she knew M and who knows, she might have had contacts within MI6 and they let people know what happened with Bond and Tracy and this and that. So I don't mind it, and I actually really like it. Like, the ski sequence in this movie kind of reminds me of the ski sequence in On Her Majesty's Secret Service in all the good ways. And Pierce here is probably at his best. Like I said, Goldeneye is still my favourite Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie, but he's best in this film. He's more comfortable in the role. He's a lot deadlier. He can pour the charm on when he wants. I really like this movie in all regards. Denise Richards as Dr. Jones, Dr. Christmas Jones. Never had a problem with her. She's beautiful. I mean, yeah, clearly she's here for her sex appeal. And that's the same thing with the next movie, Die Another Day. But I don't mind. She's not badly acted. She's actually competent in her role. She doesn't ham it up. No one in this film actually hams it up. Everyone in this movie is really on point. You can tell that the director, Michael Apted, I believe his name was, he was a director of drama, not action. And when he came on board for this film, big difference from his previous movies. And he handles it perfectly. There is no issue with direction in this movie. There's no fault that I can really pick. I feel like the script is very tight. The script is really good. It doesn't overstay its welcome, this movie. And it handles the twist. And I guess the subject matter of, you know, using her seduction as a way of gaining control over these men. Even Bond falls for her. I really love that about Elektra King. Brilliant. And one massive mention has to go to Desmond Llewellyn, who plays Q. This was his final James Bond movie. He unfortunately passed away, I think it was only a few weeks after the premiere of The World Is Not Enough. He was at a book signing. He was driving home on his own. There was a head-on collision with another car. And unfortunately, Desmond Llewellyn didn't survive. He passed away. He was, I think it was 85 years old at the time. And in this movie here, we're introduced to his replacement, or his assistant, who Bond refers to as R. And he's played by John Cleese, who will return in the next film as Q. And Desmond Llewellyn gets a wonderful little send-off in this movie where he says to Bond, "I've always tried to teach you two things.
First, never let them see you bleed.
And the second?
Always have an escape plan."
It must have been like someone could tell the future, because it was such a beautiful moment and respect for not only the actor, but the character of Q. And I really did, like, even in this movie, in this sequence, when Bond and Q are having their moment inside his Q branch area, they've got it's a very loving and very caring relationship. I mean, he is pissed off with Bond because he took his boat and it was going to be his retirement boat. But once they get over that, it's a beautiful little moment between the two. And yeah, I remember my heart was breaking when I heard about Desmond Llewellyn passing, and I read it in the paper, and Oh, I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. And when I went to go watch this movie the second time at the cinema, it was after that news had come out about his passing, and it was it was a powerful moment. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. So we've spoken about the movie. I absolutely love it. Fantastic movie. Great score. Beautiful music from Garbage. Great, fantastic action. Valentin Zakovsky returns, played by Robbie Coltrane, and dies in this movie too, which was a bit sad because I was actually really loving the character in this movie. He's done really well. But yeah, so let's get on to the kill counts and everything like that, because I feel like that's what we need to get into. So in this film here, Bond's kill count is a whopping 19. He takes out a whole bunch of people in helicopters. There's a moment at Zakovsky's caviar factory, and Bond's taking out helicopters with his BMW, and blows one of them up with a gas pipe and everything like that, and takes out a couple of the paratrooper people, the paragliders. He also takes out Elektra, and he also takes out Renard. So I think that's fantastic. We've got 7 different locations. Bond doesn't really travel he goes to Spain, but he's only there for like 10, 15 minutes. He's in England, Scotland, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, the Caspian Sea, and then Istanbul for the remainder of the movie. And then for ladies bedded, I'm going to read this one out. He's got Dr. Molly Warmflash, who is the doctor for MI6, who Bond seduces and convinces to say, hey, my shoulder's okay, let me continue on with my mission. We then have Elektra King, and we have Dr. Christmas Jones, who has one of the best little lines toward the very end of the movie when Bond goes, I thought Christmas only came once a year. And what a send-off, what an absolute send-off, and then, credits roll. Look, phenomenal movie, absolutely loved it. The World Is Not Enough I still love it. It's been 26 years since this movie came out, and I'm still... Is it 26 years? It is 1999 to 2025, 26 years, and I'm still loving this movie every time I watch it. I don't know if I can say that about the next film, Die Another Day. We will get to that when the release comes out. But look, until then, enjoy. Goodbye. Ross will return. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Ross, and this is another review, another James Bond review. This time we're talking about Die Another Day, the 4th and final Pierce Brosnan James Bond film. It's also the 20th overall James Bond movie since the first one, Dr. No, in 1962. And it's also the 40th anniversary, when this film released, of the James Bond film franchise. So it has a lot to live up to, this movie. Does it live up to all that? Well, it's a bit complicated. You see, this movie here is one of those films that when it came out, it was a financial success, making quite a lot at the box office. At the time of release, unadjusted for inflation, it was also the biggest James Bond movie. And it was extremely popular when it came out. I was, 18 years old when this movie released, actually, thinking back on it. 18 years old. I remember watching this movie at the cinemas with my mum. She is, if you've watched a lot of these videos, you would know that my mum was actually the fan in the family of James Bond that got me into James Bond. She would always watch the movies and always enjoys watching any new actor take his opportunity to be James Bond. So when Pierce Brosnan came around, my mum and dad took me and my 2 brothers to go watch Goldeneye at the cinemas. I don't remember the experience that well. Tomorrow Never Dies came along, we watched that. The World Is Not Enough, I watched that with my friends. And then for this film, it was just a date between me and my mum. My mum went out, got the tickets, surprised me, And then we went and watched it the night of release. And it was a fun time. Obviously, I went with my mum. I enjoyed the time with my mum, eating popcorn. It was a good film at that point, and I had a good time. It was a fun time. Since 2002, this movie took a massive nosedive in enjoyment, in quality for me. I started to pick out all its faults. I started to dislike this and dislike that, the villains, the plot, the script, some of the acting in it, the gadgets, the invisible car, the music, everything. Pretty much every part of this movie I had issues with, major issues with it. But over time, you soften up. And Die Another Day is one of those movies that I've actually softened up a little bit with. It's happened to me actually a few times this year. I was a little bit down on the down in the dirt when it came to The Man with a Golden Gun. And then after a comment, I went back and I re-watched it, and I had a fantastic time watching The Man with a Golden Gun again. And this film here has that same feel for me, where it's very fantastical, very over the top, and it's got a lot to live up to, considering it is, like I said, the 20th Bond film, the 40th anniversary, and we didn't know it at the time, but it was also Pierce's final Bond film. Now, it's not his best Bond film. There are better Pierce Brosnan films. This ranks, for me personally, I'll just come right out and say it, this is his least enjoyable Bond film for me, Pierce Brosnan's. It is nowhere near the quality that we've gotten for his previous three films. The music in this film is a little bit too electronic. I had faults with it when it came to Tomorrow Never Dies. David Arnold, he's a good composer. I just feel like he really does rely a little bit too on the electronic side of the musical score. I liked what he did when it came to The World Is Not Enough. He was a little bit more subdued when it came to the electronic mix. This film here, he really ramps it up. And it's also the case when it comes to the Die Another Day title song by Madonna. I don't like that song. It's one of those James Bond theme songs that whenever it comes on in my playlist, yes, I have a Bond playlist, whenever it comes on, I skip it. I'm not a fan of it. I appreciate it within the context of this film, in that when the title sequence does happen, the theme title sequence, we see Bond's torture for 14 months in North Korea. So it has some use, or else I would skip it, but I do not like the music. I do not like what David Arnold has done with the musical score. But let me get into the film. Let me actually talk about this movie. It's a little bit in two parts. The first half of the movie, highly enjoyable, fun, everything. The second half of the movie can either make or break the whole entire film for some people. And it also does it for me, depending on the mood and when I watch this movie. But the movie actually starts off in North Korea. Bond is surfing with two other agents, and he, lands on the shores of North Korea. He has to sneak in, obviously. He hijacks a helicopter, steals the identity of a guy called Mr. Van Buren. He steals his identity, and this guy here is a diamond smuggler. So Bond arrives at the Colonel Moon's army base. He arrives at this guy's army base, and he's hands over these diamonds. As soon as he arrives, you know something's not right. Someone takes a photo of Bond, who is Zhao, which is the henchman to Colonel Moon, takes a photo of Bond, sends it off to someone. We don't know what he's doing with it, but he sends it off to someone. We later find out that this person is a mole, is a double agent within MI6 that reveals to Colonel Moon and Zhao that Van Buren is not Van Buren, it's actually James Bond. He's an MI6 secret agent, an assassin pretty much. So this whole entire pre-title sequence happens that Bond infiltrates as a diamond smuggler, gets found out, escapes a firing squad, massive explosion goes off, and then Bond chases Colonel Moon on some hovercrafts along the demilitarized zone, which is between North Korea and South Korea. And it's this like kilometers worth of space. And it is just landmines, guns, everything. So obviously the hovercrafts can travel over the landmines, and Bond is, you know, using the hovercraft, and he's getting his machine gun and shooting beside. The landmines are going off, exploding. You see these hovercrafts fly out of the way, but he's chasing Colonel Moon, who has also escaped. And as he's chasing him, Bond eventually jumps onto Colonel Moon's hovercraft, and they get into this fight. Bond kicks the hovercraft into high gear. Colonel Moon hits the actual rudder, which, you know, where the big fan is. He hits it. It goes off the edge of the bridge, like off a cliff down into a waterfall. Colonel Moon goes down with it because he can't pull himself off this fan, and Bond manages to grab onto a bell, which was above them as they went off. He grabs onto the bell, drops down, looks over the edge, and then all of a sudden, General Moon, who is Colonel Moon's father, General Moon, rocks up, captures Bond. He then spends the next 14 months imprisoned and tortured by North Korean soldiers, and then he's set free, or more, that he's exchanged, prisoner exchange, for Zhao, who was the henchman of Colonel Moon. And we find out that during that 14 months, there was information being leaked from the prison where Bond was the only inmate. And the Americans, the NSA, have told MI6, you need to get this guy out because he's leaking information. There is information coming from that base. Get him out now. So they extract Bond, do the prisoner exchange. M pretty much confronts Bond and says to him, look, there was information coming out of that prison. You were the only one in there. Bond is pleading, saying, hey, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything. I know the deal. If I get caught, you don't give up any information. He eventually escapes, like being held captive by MI6, ends up in Shanghai, has a shave, gets a brand new suit, and he's now on the hunt for Zhao because he believes Zhao knows who the double agent is within MI6. Zhao has the information Bond needs. So from Shanghai, he goes to Cuba. He finds out where Zhao is being kept at this like island, which does gene therapy, alters your appearance and things like that. And Zhao's actually in the process of having his appearance altered. And when you see him at the start of the film, you know, he's got nice long hair. Well, not long hair, but nice hair, clean shaven. He's a very good looking man. And then during that title sequence, Bond's on his watch. He's planted in the briefcase where the diamonds are. He's planted a little mini C4 charge. And during the firing sequence, when they're about to kill Bond, he actually detonates the C4 and it explodes. The diamonds go flying into Zhao's face, and he's got diamonds embedded all in the side of his face, which is a pretty cool aesthetic. It's a sick look. I actually really like it. I wish he kept his hair because his hair looks really cool. Later in the movie, he's kind of bald. He looks like an albino. He's very pale skin, but obviously it's because he was in the transfer of having his appearance go from Zhao into this new identity. When Bond arrives in Cuba, though, he meets a woman named Jacinta Jones, who is played by Halle Berry. And Halle Berry in this movie is absolutely horrible. I really have a hard time watching her on screen in this movie. I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of Halle Berry. I absolutely adore her in some movies. She's a fantastic actress. I mean, she did win an Oscar for Best Acting, I think it was in Monsters Ball, that movie. She was really good in that movie, but for some unknown reason in this film here, she plays it over the top.
I take it Mr. Bond's been explaining his Big Bang Theory.
Oh, yeah, I think I got the thrust of it.
I see.
She's insufferable on screen. She does these silly attempts at humor. She tries to be very witty and she just comes across. She's shocking. I don't know why they had her play the role that way and why they allowed her to continue playing it that way. I mean, she hadn't won an Oscar during this movie, I should say. She won the Oscar. So it was not like they were getting her after she'd won the Oscar. And the choices she makes as an actress to play Jinx the way she does is beyond me. I know that they were trying to appeal to a younger generation. I know they were trying to get, I believe the movie Triple X with Vin Diesel was coming out in 2002. I actually think it came out a few months before this movie. And then at the start of 2002, The Bourne Identity came out. And I think the producers were kind of thinking that, oh, Bond's a little bit long in the tooth now. He's getting a bit old. It's an old franchise, 40 years, 20 movies. Now we've got Vin Diesel, who was hot off the movie, Fast and the Furious. He's coming in with a spy movie, and he's meant to be hip and cool with the youngsters. And we've got The Bourne Identity, which proved to be a big success. And maybe they felt like they had to appeal to a very young generation, which is why they've got Madonna, which is why they've got Halle Berry for the sex appeal. But it doesn't work for me. It terribly dates this movie in 2002. And like I said, Halle Berry in this movie, I could have done without her. But cast another actress in the role, she would have been better. She's almost just a female version of James Bond. And it doesn't work when you just make James Bond a female. It doesn't work. It's all the other actors, Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, 5 actors. They can do that charming, witty, charismatic, deadly, that funny type of character that Bond is when he wants to be. They can do that and it works. But we can see by this film that it doesn't work when you just make it a female. And they try and do that here. She is sexy. She's beautiful to look at. I mean, when she walks out of the water, which is an homage to Honey Rider from Dr. No, she's gorgeous, absolutely stunning. But she just irritates me every moment she's on screen. She really has these cringy lines. She kind of ruins her scenes in this movie, which is bad because a lot of her scenes are with Pierce Brosnan, and he is always great on screen. He's always charming and witty and sophisticated, and everything that you want from Bond is Pierce Brosnan. He's deadly when he needs to be too. But when she's on screen, it just doesn't work. She's not a great character. Jinx is not a great character. And when you think back during 2002, I remember during the making of this movie, when this movie was being made and they had news articles and the internet was around back then and you were on the internet and you were looking up, for spoilers for the movie or set things and interviews and things like that. Producers were heavily pushing Halle Berry and the character of Jinx to be a spin-off franchise. They wanted an entire film franchise based on Jinx. It just doesn't work. And I'm so glad that they chose not to do that, because who knows what could have happened. I mean, I know that they wanted to bring Michelle Yeoh back in The World Is Not Enough, and then apparently they wanted to bring her character back in this film here, and she's a fantastic agent. Brilliant. I absolutely loved Michelle Yeoh in Tomorrow Never Dies. I would have loved to have had her back. But Halle Berry just really does play it over the top, and it doesn't work in this film for me. I'm sure there's others out there that love her in this movie and think that she's a fantastic character and everything, but not for me. It ruins the movie for me. Now, once we meet her and Bond, we eventually find out that she's working for the NSA. She's after Zhao also. Zhao escapes. Bond finds these diamonds that Zhao had with him. And these diamonds eventually lead him back to London to a guy named Gustav Graves, who's played by Toby Stephens. And again, it seems to be a running trend with this movie, over the top. Toby Stephens, great actor. But he plays this role over the top. I was thinking about it. I went for a walk before I filmed this because I really wanted to get my thoughts down, and I was writing a lot of stuff down. And I thought to myself, he really does remind me of Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill. Toby Stephens does, which isn't a bad thing. I liked Christopher Walken. I liked his character, Max Zorin. And I thought the over-the-top, the twisted craziness of him worked for A View to a Kill. In this film, Toby Stephens, his spoiler, not that it's really much of a spoiler, but Toby Stephens is playing Gustav Graves, who is actually Colonel Moon. He's had the gene therapy, it worked, he went through the transformation, and he's now Gustav Graves. And he's a rich, multi-billionaire entrepreneur, and he's using diamonds to create a massive satellite mirror that can harness the sun to put sunshine anywhere across the world 24/7. You know, you never have to worry about anything. You can grow crops during the nights because you can direct the sunlight at the crops and things like that. The true reason he's building this thing, though, is to use it as a space laser, a destructive beam of concussive force that's going to destroy, and we see it later in the movie, he uses it to destroy the demilitarized zone. He just wipes it out completely with the satellite. And that's his whole plan. He's using the diamonds to build this thing, and he eventually interacts with Bond, and Bond doesn't know who he is. And I remember when I watched this at the cinemas, as soon as we find out what Zhao was doing, which was changing his appearance with the gene therapy, as soon as we were introduced to Graves, I instantly said to my mum, that's the Korean leader. That's the Korean guy. And my mum goes, how do you know? And I go, oh, you watch, like that. So to me, it wasn't a twist. And I cannot remember if they were trying to be a twist, but it just wasn't a twist. I remember watching the movie and I'm like, no, this is easily, we know what's going on. But Bond interacts with him, introduces himself. They have this great sword fight. It starts off as fencing and ends with big broadswords, and they're just slashing away. And you can tell they're going real hard on each other. But at the end of it, Graves just starts laughing, writes Bond a check, and then invites him to his ice palace in Iceland, where he's going to demonstrate the space satellite, the diamond satellite, the sunbeam, I guess. And also Bond meets Miranda Frost, who is the assistant to Graves. And Miranda Frost is played by Rosamund Pike. And she is over the top. There's a big trend. She plays the character over the top. You know, if all the characters are at 10, she turns it up to 11, just like everybody else here. And again, spoiler, she is the double agent. She's the mole within MI6. She is leaking the information to Zhao and Colonel Moon, who's now Graves, and she's been sent by MI6 to work with Graves to find out what's going on. But in actual fact, she's a double agent within MI6. And it makes me laugh because it turns out she was the finalist, or a number 2 in fencing in the Sydney Olympics back in 2000 or something like that. And Colonel Moon rigged it. They overdosed number 1, so she became the number 1. And we find out that when they were at university together, Miranda Frost and Colonel Moon were there at the same time. They were pretty much students together at this university. And the fact that within the movie they actually mention how we overlooked this info, MI6 overlooked that information. They didn't do any sort of background check on Miranda Frost before they sent her to go work with Gustav Graves and everything like that. And it just, stupidity. That's part of the scripting issues of this movie. But she's an interesting character in this film. I picked her twist when she appeared in the movie because she has this brief scene with M just before we go to Iceland. She has this scene with M where M sits her down and says, you don't fornicate with any of the MI6 agents, even though, you know, there have been attempts by people to sleep with you. And she's very stern and says, I'm not that type of person. I won't do that. And pretty much tells M, I'm not going to do that with Bond. And it's this 2-minute scene that is not required in the movie. We don't need to see that. It makes absolutely no point for this movie, for that scene between M and Miranda Frost to be there. It feels like it was just there so the audience knows, oh, she's working for MI6. She can't be the double agent. That's how it comes across to me. And this is also the point of the movie where people have major issues with this movie, with Die Another Day, because as soon as you get to Iceland, things go very fantastical. At the beginning of the movie, it's a bit grounded. There are some CGI moments that are a bit, no thank you, but once we get introduced to the invisible Aston Martin, the invisible car, and we go to Iceland and there's this massive ice palace, and then we see the space lasers and everything like that. Then we get Bond windsurfing over the water and everything. That's when things start to go off the rail a bit. Gustav Graves goes from an 11 up to like a 21. He really goes over the top. We find out that, yes, he's Colonel Moon. Bond gets, well, I guess, turned against by Miranda Frost. Jinx is also there. Jinx gets captured. There's an entire sequence. It's enjoyable, though. If you can just put aside the silliness of what's happening, it's fun. I know that the car goes invisible, but we've seen the Lotus Esprit turn into a submarine. We've seen in The Man with the Golden Gun a flying car. We've seen volcanoes hollowed out to have bases, rockets that swallow other rockets and land. We've seen these types of things before, and we've always just been like, oh, that's an element of Bond. That's part of the franchise. And I guess here what I'm trying to say is the invisibility of the Aston Martin is a bit much. Maybe it would have been better if it was like an almost Predator effect where it distorts the image of the car instead of just completely having it go invisible. But Iceland has a very, very awesome car chase sequences between Bond in his Aston Martin and Zhao in his Jaguar. I think it's the XKR. The two cars are decked out with gadgets. You know, Zhao's got like missiles, rockets, machine guns. He's got a battering ram at the front, this massive cannon that shoots up at the back and starts pelting Bond's Aston Martin. And Bond's got, auto-targeting shotguns on the front, missiles. He's got an ejector seat. He's got rear-firing rockets. The invisibility. There is so much to like about that sequence, and a few things not to like with the editing, the speed up, slow down. Things like that kind of pull me out of the action a little bit. But it's still enjoyable. Like, that's the thing with this movie, that I know I shouldn't like it. I know I should really dislike a lot of the parts of this movie, but it's also one of those films where when I want to just watch a fun Bond film, just turn my brain off, sit down and enjoy it, I can put this movie on. It is one of those Bond films that I really do just think to myself, oh yeah, that's pretty fun. You know, like, it's one of those movies that if I had a party or if I just wanted to do something and I could throw it on in the background without having to pay too much attention to it. There are so many little fun things about this movie that I think make up for the things that I'm not so crash hot about. Like I said, Halle Berry kind of brings this movie down for me. She pulls me out of it. Some of the editing in this movie pulls me out. Like I said, the overuse of slow motion, that's not needed. The overly dramatic moments between Graves or Moon and his father, General Moon, when they're in the cargo plane at the end. I don't like the fact that Graves, to control this big satellite, he's pretty much got the upper half of the Iron Man suit on. It looks like the Nintendo Power Glove on his hand. He's got this massive helmet. It's got electricity that he can shoot. He can control the laser on his wrist. I watch this and I'm like, why is that in the movie? Why couldn't it just be a control? Why does he have to wear this power suit? It honestly feels like they were just, what the kids like nowadays, let's put that in the movie. And I get it, because they were trying to make this a very over-the-top movie, very fantastical. They achieved some of that, but I also feel like Barbara Broccoli, Michael G. Wilson really needed, at this point, not anymore, but they really needed to pull their finger out and really step back and say, if we keep going down this path, we're going to get to the point where we get to what Moonraker did, where we're in outer space, and then we have to go right back down to For Your Eyes Only. And I mean, I guess they did do that, because after this movie, we did get the reboot to the franchise with Daniel Craig in Casino Royale. But we should never have gotten to these overly fantastical elements that are in Die Another Day, because Goldeneye was very grounded but fun, adventurous. It was a good action thriller. Tomorrow Never Dies was fantastical, adventurous, funny action thriller again. The World Is Not Enough, a little bit more serious, a little bit more drama focused, but again, an action thriller, spy movie. And then this film here just seems to just shift out of the drama, pump up the fantastical, and it's really one of those movies where it's overly popcorn movie, which worked for Bond in the 70s and the 80s, but I feel like as they were starting to go through the Brosnan era, they thought, oh, how can we reward fans for 40 years and 20 films? What should we do? And we got this film. There are so many callbacks, throwbacks, homages to previous Bond films. Some of them are really fun. Some of them work. Some of them don't. Going into Q's lab, which is now John Cleese, because unfortunately Desmond Llewellyn passed away a few weeks after The World Is Not Enough premiered. And I like John Cleese's Q. He plays it more like Desmond Llewellyn did in Goldfinger, where he's kind of more irritated by Bond. He just wants him out and he's done. I don't like the VR sequence in this movie where Bond's got glasses that gives him a training sequence. I feel like it's pointless. Why is it there? It's not needed. We didn't need that. That's a problem with this movie, where it feels like we can't go more than 10 to 15 minutes without some sort of action sequence. It feels like our attention span is gonna waver off if there's not an action sequence. And don't get me wrong, when I watched this movie, the many times I watched it this month, I wasn't pulling out my phone. I was actually concentrating on the movie because I was having a good time. But there are some action moments in this movie where it's like, well, do we really need that? Did we need to go over the top like that? Did we need the VR? Did we need all those lasers when Jinx is laying down on that, trapped bed kind of steel plate, whatever it was? I get it, but did we need it? There are some things in this movie where I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And then there's other moments in this movie where I'm just like, I roll my eyes. And it's also a movie that I can really enjoy if I just don't take it seriously. And I've learned to do that. It's taken 23 years. If you had asked me to review this movie 12 months ago, I wouldn't have felt the same way as I do now. But this has probably been the best year that I've ever had watching the James Bond movies, because I've really taken my time. Like I've said in previous reviews, I watch the James Bond movies every single year. Sometimes I do a rewatch 2 or 3 times of every movie. So that's 25 movies. I can watch them 3 times per year. And then that doesn't include the times when I'll just throw Goldeneye on in the background, or The Living Daylights, or The Spy Who Loved Me. I'll just throw it on randomly. But this is the first time since probably 2011 where I haven't watched all of the movies in the same year, because I've taken my time, because I'm doing the reviews and it's hard for me to work and the house and also do the reviews. I've really had to take my time and slow down. And it's given me the opportunity to watch the movies a little bit more and to just relax, chill out, and just enjoy the films for what they are, which is just fun times. And that's what I'm having with this film. I know people probably came here for me to just rip into it, but I honestly can't, because if someone had told me, oh, do you want to go watch Die Another Day again? I'd probably say, yeah, let's sit down and watch it again. It's a fun film. There are things to like, there are things to dislike about this movie. I've said what I don't like about this movie. Another thing I don't like about this movie is the NSA's involvement in the entire plot of this movie. I think it's Michael Madsen, plays like the NSA. He's like the director of the NSA. I think he's the superior to Jinx's character, who is an NSA agent. He's not required in this movie at all. I thought about it while I was walking, and I'm like, if we took the NSA out of this movie, all the events of this movie could still happen, minus Jinx being an NSA agent. She could be someone that Zhao killed her family members or something, and she's involved out of personal revenge, and she's tracking him down, which I just came up with that right now, and it sounds 100 times better than her involvement in this movie as it is now. So little things like that, I don't mind the gene therapy change of appearance. I find that that's pretty good. The space satellite laser cannon's pretty good. The overuse of CGI, not good. Bond windsurfing, it looked dated when it came out. It looks dated now. And frankly, if they had just stuck with practical effects a lot more and actually had a windsurfing sequence that they could manage to pull off with practical effects, I think it would have looked a lot better, held up, and probably wouldn't have been hated by fans or mentioned by fans all the time. Because we've seen Bond ski, we've seen Bond have car chase sequences. You know, when Casino Royale came out, we saw Bond doing parkour and free running over buildings and stuff like that, and everyone loves those types of things. But the windsurfing, because it's CGI and it looks so fake, it rips you out of the movie completely, and you end up just rolling your eyes and thinking, oh, please don't do this. Why are you going into CGI heavy territory? And you can tell also when they're in the cargo plane and it's flying, when Bond and Jinx are in the helicopter at the end of the movie. The over-reliance on CGI is not something that should be in a Bond film, especially when it's noticeable. But this film here, it really does pull you out with the overuse of CGI. Even at the start of the movie, during the gun barrel sequence, when Pierce, or Bond, I should say, turns around and fires the gun at the screen, the Walther at the screen. This time now we see a bullet travel toward the screen. If you were wearing 3D glasses, it might be good, but it quite literally travels toward the screen, and it's like, why? Why did we need that? Was Lee Tamahori, I believe it's pronounced, was he the right choice for this movie? I don't know. I don't think he handled the duties of director well. There are a lot of choices when it comes to actors and their acting that is like, how did you let them get away with that? Some of the editing in this movie, why was that allowed? I know that the producers, Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, have a lot more say than probably the directors do. They've got final cut, I know that. They let it happen, which scares me, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Now, that's my takes on Die Another Day. I enjoy it. It's not the greatest. It's not the worst. It probably sits toward the lower end of the Bond films, but it definitely doesn't sit at the bottom of Bond films. It's just a fun film if you want it to be fun. If you take it too seriously, you're not going to enjoy it. And that's unfortunately the way this movie is. Now I'm going to look down at my phone because I want to grab the stats, which is Bond's kill count. We'll start with that. 10. He takes out Zhao in a really good sequence with the cars where his invisibility in the car manages to kick in at just the right time that he reverses, and Zhao drives off the edge of like this little area, like a staircase area in his car. He drives off as the ice palace is melting, and then Bond pulls out his Walther and shoots the chandelier made of ice and kills Zhao. So he's gone. He also takes out Gustav Graves when Graves is hanging onto the side of the plane, and Bond hits his electricity powers and Graves shocks and flies into the engine, the propeller of the plane, the propeller engine. So little good sequences like that. Pierce is really good in this movie, so I do enjoy him like always. Oh, and the other things, I almost put my phone away then. The other things, we've got 7 locations in this movie, which is so much better than the ones we got in The World Is Not Enough. You know, we're in North Korea at the start, then we go to London, Cuba, we've got Shanghai thrown in there. We go to Havana, all these different locations. Iceland, the Ice Palace is beautiful. That entire sequence with the Ice Palace, that is one amazing set piece. Like, I remember looking at behind the scenes and you could actually see them wearing like special things over their shoes because it was so delicate, some of the areas and things like that. So really good. When it comes to ladies bedded, there's two. James Bond manages to bed Jinx and also Miranda Frost. Now, I have to talk about the love scene with Bond and Jinx because this was a little bit uncomfortable when I was watching it with my mum because it's just like, why do they have to go? Anyway, we're not going to talk about it. I'll probably get flagged by YouTube for some reason, but it's just a very, like, did we need the sequence to go that long? Did we need her to pull out the pocket knife and then eat the fruit and everything? Just why? That's what I'm trying to say. Jinx in this movie is terrible. Just, I don't like her in this movie. I don't like Halle Berry in this film. Jinx was a jinx on this film for me. I just wanted to interject. I'm just recording this after my actual review because I realised that we finished the Pierce Brosnan 4 films that he's done. And I wanted to give my final thoughts on Pierce as James Bond. I feel like it's important I do that because he is the James Bond that got me into James Bond. I mean, Goldeneye on the Nintendo 64 was what made me really seek out James Bond. But Goldeneye, the movie, at the cinemas was the first Bond film I saw at the cinemas. And it really pushed my love of James Bond to the forefront. I remember the first CD that I ever purchased was the Lost Boys soundtrack. The second CD I ever purchased was the James Bond 30th anniversary CD of all the theme songs, and I'll show that on screen if I can. And I used to listen to that on repeat. I knew the theme songs back to back, and I hadn't even watched all the films yet. And they had this little booklet inside, and I used to look at that booklet and think to myself, I love James Bond so much, I need to go out and find these movies. And if you've watched my previous 19 reviews of James Bond, you would know why I love Bond. You would know a little bit of my backstory growing up with James Bond and how I came to adore the movies and watch the movies and things like that. And Pierce for me was so special because it was a time in my life where I was growing up. I mean, Goldeneye came out when I was about 10. And Die Another Day came out when I was 18. And it was just such, well, not 10, I was 11 when Goldeneye came out. I was born in 1984 and that was 1995. But this era of James Bond was so important to me because it was when I was at that age where I would go to the movies with my friends, to the cinemas, and we would talk about movies all the time. We were playing video games, you know, GoldenEye 64 plus Nightfire plus Everything or Nothing. I remember playing Everything or Nothing, the last Pierce Brosnan James Bond game, and I would play it in co-op with my best mate at the time, Besnick, and we were both diehard Bond fans. And this film here was the movie where he and I really bonded over. When this film came out, he and I were like, we realised, oh, you're a Bond fan? I'm a Bond fan. And this was it. This was when, mate, me and this guy here were just like, every day, Bond, 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 Bond. And for me, it was Pierce that got me into Bond, Pierce that made me fall in love with Bond, and he was so important to my growing up with James Bond. And I know previously I have said that George Lazenby was my favourite because it's my favourite, you know, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is my favourite James Bond movie, but Timothy Dalton is my number one. Pierce is just behind. He's my number two. Pierce Brosnan is a wonderful Bond. I know he's taken elements of Sean Connery and Roger Moore, mixed them together and created his own mold of Bond. And he's done it so fantastically that if he had been given another one or two films, he probably would have cemented himself as the definitive James Bond. Unfortunately, he ended his run with Die Another Day, which, when people look back on it, they realise it's not such a good film. Like I said, I've managed to turn that part off and I can just enjoy the film as something fun, and it's enjoyable, and it's really plays up the fantastical, and that's fine. But I just feel like he was wronged when it came to his fifth installment. And it's a shame that he only got the chance to do 4. I know he was in the running back in the day with The Living Daylights, and he lost it, and it went to Timothy Dalton. And then, 8 years later, he came back with Goldeneye and gave us one of the best James Bond movies, if not the best James Bond movie of all time. And I will be having a ranking of my Bond films, but I'm going to do that after No Time to Die. I am going to rewatch all the movies again over a month and then give my definitive 2026, I guess, ranking of the movies. But I just feel like Pierce is the easiest Bond to watch, the easiest to enjoy, and probably the best if someone needs to start off with a Bond. Maybe that's spoiling a little bit about what I think of Daniel Craig, but it is what it is. Now, it's also worth noting that this is Samantha Bond's final appearance as Moneypenny. She was introduced with Goldeneye and she went out with this film here. And she never really got much to do in the grand scheme of things. I enjoyed her in Goldeneye. She wasn't really doing much in Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough Again, and in this film here, she's got this horrible sequence where she puts the VR glasses on and ends up making out with Bond. And it's just like, yeah, okay, it is what it is. Lois Maxwell's the definitive, Moneypenny for me, and that's how it is. But yeah, it's worth pointing that out. John Cleese also gone as Q, but yeah, back to Pierce. Wonderful. He's got four entries in the Bond series. Probably one of the best Bond movies of all time is in there. But I think overall, he does quite well. I think he's got a couple of solid entries behind him. And I think people nowadays can kind of forgive Die Another Day for being over the top. And I know I certainly can. So I hope others can give it a go again. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Now, as another update, the very first review was Dr. No that I did back in January, I believe. And it was me watching the movies while working out, and I was trying to lose some weight. And I started the movies at one point during, I believe it was I can't even remember when, but at one point I stopped working out, stopped recording myself working out, and I stopped eating healthy, and I lost about, I can't remember how much it was, about 9 kilos for maybe the first 2 months. And then I stopped working out. And then from March until maybe around August, September, I stopped working out. I put that weight back on. And then my wife was on a diet and she said to me, maybe we should do this together. It's better if we're both in it together. We can help each other, motivate each other. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's do this together. And 20 minutes before recording this, I have managed to lose 12.1 kilos in 12 months. Now, the impressive thing about that is that I lost about 9 kilos, put that 9 kilos back on, and then lost 12 kilos again. So technically, I've lost more weight, but from my starting weight in January to my ending weight currently, there's 12 kilos lost, 12.1 kilos exactly, which pounds will be up on the screen. Now, what have I done to do that? It's simply eating right. I just try and get my steps up every day. I try and average at least 10,000 steps. And today being a Sunday, I'm not working today, so I decided to go for a walk, which is why I was collecting my thoughts, getting all my thoughts together. But I went for a walk, got my steps up, had something to eat, weighed myself, had a shower, and now I'm recording this. And I'm very proud of myself. I'm very happy with myself. My mental health when I start losing weight is 1,000 times better than when I'm not losing weight. And I am really motivated at the moment because we're in December now. We're like the first week of December. And in the first week of February, which is now 2 months away, my wife and I are going to Disneyland in Anaheim in California. And the aim for me is to lose more weight, obviously, to be more comfortable, to be healthier also. I mean, I'm eating healthy now. I'm eating very healthy now, and I'm eating right, as is my wife. And we're both losing weight at our own pace, and it's working. And I'm just so excited because it was in 2019 when my wife and I got married. We got married at the end of 2019, in October of 2019. And my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they were married in March of 2019. And I was one of the groomsmen, and my brother-in-law bought me a nice blue suit. And I remember when I wore it that day, there were two things that came to mind. Number one was James Bond, even though he's never worn a blue suit. But number one was James Bond, and number two was the Kingsman, the Secret Service, because we had umbrellas that day because it was starting to drizzle a little bit. And a couple of weeks back, I tried on the blue suit again because I still have it. It's in my closet. And I tried it on and it was a little bit snug. And I said to my wife, before we go back to America, I want to be able to put that suit on. It's like a little goal for myself to be able to wear it. And we have a wedding at the end of next year, 2026, and I'd like to be able to wear that suit for that wedding. Hopefully I've lost more weight and I can buy another suit, but I'd like to be able, my current aim is to wear that blue suit for that wedding. And I'm getting there. I'm slowly getting there. I'm losing about 0.5 kilo a week at this point, which I think is manageable, and I'm happy with that. I'm not over pushing myself. I'm still eating fantastically, full meals, 3 meals a day. It's wonderful, plus dessert, let me tell you that. But that's how this channel originally started. It was me trying to get fit, trying to get healthy and things like that. And the Bond reviews were also that. I was going to rewatch the Bond movies, work out at the same time, and give a review plus a health update. So I wanted to bring that back because I am doing that again. So the health update is I've lost 12.1 kilos in the 12 months. I'm feeling great headspace-wise. I'm in a new place of work. So I'm out of the previous place of work where I was, which was absolutely horrible on my mental health. I'll talk about it one day, but that's way down the line. But I also just want to thank people for tuning in, people for watching. That always means a lot. Every time I see a view or a comment or a like, it means a lot. So I really do appreciate it, and I always try and do the same thing for people that I enjoy watching. I will subscribe, I will like, I will leave a comment because I know the struggles of trying to get a channel going and things like that. Now, I know I don't upload as often as a lot of others, and I'm trying to rectify that. But as I said, I'm trying to have that work, personal life, and the YouTube channel. It's tough, it's difficult. I'm sure people can understand. But I'm going to try and make more frequent uploads. That's a promise from me to you. Now, if this is my final upload for 2025, which at this rate it kind of looking like it is, unless I just do a channel update, thank you. Thank you for 2025. Thank you for all the views. For everyone that's tuned in, I do appreciate it, and the comments. And I just want to say to everyone to have a fantastic time with your family over the holidays coming up, and to just really go into 2026 with integrity and ambition about what you want to do going forward, because you need that in life. Have a goal, set yourself a goal, and just aim for it. Whether it's something financial or a personal goal, just aim for it, get there, and be safe while you're doing it. So to close out, thank you very much. Ross will return in 2026 or even late 2025, but he will return, and thank you very much.
The name's Bond. James Bond.